Chapter 1. 91 BC Castile, Red River Valley. Rome's most elite 13th Legion was stationed here. On the other side of the Red River Valley is the Targo tribe, a typical Gallic tribe with a population of 200,000. Almost all the people are soldiers, facing Gaul soldiers dozens of times larger than themselves. Even the most elite Roman legions did not dare to advance rashly. Joining the legion is to make money. Otherwise, I would not want to work for the scumbags of the Senate. Master Brian is right. Those idiots in the Senate are actually forbidden to take the initiative to attack. Don't you know that the fastest way to make money is to catch slaves? Master Brian is right. Brian, 23 years old, was dressed in muscular plate armor, riding on a Gallic warhorse, and with black hair and black pupils, he was a standard ancient Roman handsome man. And behind him is a whole group of ancient Roman soldiers. Under normal circumstances, the Roman legion is composed of 10 brigades, each with 400 to 600 people. And behind Brian is the 1st Battalion of the 13th Legion, with a total of 560 people. Today Brian ventured into the Red River Valley with a large force. Commander Brian, you mobilized the army without authorization. What if the Legion commander convicts you? Legion Tribune Rex asked cautiously. After all, Brian led them to the Targo tribe. The Senate of the Roman Academy strictly ordered that without the order of the Senate, no legion could attack indiscriminately. And Brian obviously deliberately provoked the war. Don't mention damn Cadius to me. If it weren't for me, would you have raised wages? Brian looked at Rex, the Legion Tribune next to him, with a displeased face. Under his intimidation, Legion Tribune Rex couldn't help lowering his head. Since the Marian reforms, the Republic implements the recruitment system and the state supplies the army. Advertisement, however, in fact, it is the generals of the Legion who supply the army. These are relatively peaceful times. There is no war. There would be no slaves. Means no substantial income. The whole Legion is in a crumpled life. More than half of the Legion's financial expenses are provided by the Coda family where Brian belongs. Because of this relationship, Brian also became the deputy commander of the 13th Legion. Report. A group of tribal homeless people was found 1 mile ahead, Ramali. The number is about 300. Roma. 1.49 kilometers. A leading soldier who scouted the way ahead came to Brian and said eagerly, 300 people. Even if all of them are caught alive, they won't sell much. Brian stroked his smooth chin and said in thought, wait a moment. The Red River Valley is nearly 20 miles long from north to south, Rome. And the front is already extremely close to the station of the ancient Roman Legion. What is this little group of Gauls doing here? Ding dong. Please choose. 1. Let go of the Gaul vagrants and reward 1 free attribute point. 2. Kill all Gaul vagrants and reward 2 free attribute points. 3. Capture no less than 100 Gaul vagrants and reward 3 free attribute points. There are rewards for doing nothing. It seems that there must be something wrong with these 300 Gaul vagrants. Did not expect to choose 3. Order the whole army to advance. I want to see what they are doing. With a flick of his whip, Brian ordered the Legion, only 1 cohort, to move forward. Sir Brian, you are taking the initiative to attack, and the Legion commander will blame you. Advertisement. Before Rex could finish speaking, Brian whipped him. Even if the blame comes down, that's my business. Also, this is not an active attack, but to defeat the Gaul army that is preparing to attack the Legion. If you talk too much, you will be punished as disrupting military discipline and disobedience to command. Brian snorted softly. Rex is a standard Roman citizen, and the concept of the Republic is deeply rooted. But other than that, he is still a qualified soldier. After about 5 minutes, the Legion quietly advanced to a position 300 meters away from the Gauls. I saw countless Gauls rummaging through the small rivers in the Red River Valley with some unique tools. Master Deputy Legion Commander, what are they doing? The chief centurion, Polo, looked at those Gauls and his eyes lit up. They can be sold for money. But he didn't know what the Gauls were doing. They're looking for gold. Looking at the skillful movements of those people, Brian understood why they dared to take the risk and approached the Roman Legion station. It turned out that there was gold in this unremarkable river. Gold. Hearing the Roman soldiers around the golden Brian, one by one suddenly became excited. The so-called raging soldiers will raging nests. During this period of time, Brian led them to plunder the Gauls in private, countless things. The only difference is that today they are here as Roman legions. He hadn't planned to let them go, but now that he saw the gold, it was even more impossible for Brian to let them go. Polo, lead your people and touch them quietly. Block their way. Then wait for my order to attack together, and try to catch as many alive as possible. Okay. Legion Commander Polo was overjoyed and even called out the head of the Legion. Right now Brian is just the Legion's deputy chief. Chapter 2. Master Annabella. It looks like you can get nearly 30 pounds of gold today. A follower happily held the gold in his hand and said to Annabella, in just one morning, 300 people panned out nearly 30 pounds of gold. Annabella, 19 years old, the eldest daughter of the chief of the Tarago tribe. Some in the tribe claimed to have found gold in the Red River Valley. So she came here with 300 entourages, and she found a lot of gold. But Annabella couldn't be happy, and a kind of uneasiness lingered in her heart. Because the other side of the valley is Rome. An elite Roman legion was stationed there. It's too close here. What are you worried about, my lord? This is too close to Rome. Let's order the tribe to retreat quickly. Annabella finally ordered. Don't worry. That legion has been stationed there for more than 5 years and has never attacked. Followers said comfortingly. This is also the reason why they dared to get so close to the Roman legion station. The Roman Republic has not expanded abroad for several years. It's better to get someone to evacuate. This place is too disturbing. However, at this moment, a Roman horn sounded from not far away. No, it's the Roman legion. The entourage knew that this horn sound was only blown when the Roman legions were attacking. Order everyone. Get out of here quickly and put down everything in your hands, Annabella said anxiously. She knew the horror of the Roman legions, and every Roman soldier was a professional killing machine. In a 1v1 situation, even the bravest Gallic warrior has no absolute chance of winning against a Roman soldier. Of the 300 people in her hands, most of them were women and children, and they would be killed by Roman soldiers with just one charge. When Annabella fled to the north with people, it was found that a pair of Roman soldiers had already got there in front. They formed a tortoise-shell formation, which just blocked the way. Haha, it's not that easy to run away. Chief Centurion Polo looked at the panicked Gauls and smiled happily. Advertisement: his mission is stuck here like a chopping block, and Brian led the rest of the people to catch up from behind. Typical chopping block tactics. Especially in this narrow valley, absolutely how to lie, how to win. While the Gauls were hesitating, Brian led the people forward quickly. Rex, have you seen it? The leader of this group of Gauls is actually a woman. Brian proudly pointed to Annabella in the crowd. It is impossible for a woman to command a team in Rome. It seems that the status in the tribe must not be low. Catch her. I want to live. Brian gave the order, and the entire legion rushed forward like crazy. Come on, for the Tarago tribe. Annabella, with a long sword in hand, is riding on a tall horse. She noticed that the number of Roman legions surrounding her at both ends was only 500 or 600. At most there is only one brigade, not a full army. That's when she noticed Brian charging forward. In his early 20s, with fair skin, a thin body, and a muscular plate armor. Apparently the commander of this Roman army. The only way out right now is to take down the Roman commander. Under normal circumstances, 3 or 4 men with long swords could not get close to her. Annabella is very confident in her martial arts. Thinking of this, Annabella rode his horse and rushed towards Brian. Brian rode his horse and obviously lost touch with the legionnaires behind him. Suddenly, he found that the Gaul woman was rushing towards him and shouted for the horde. The corners of Brian's mouth curled up slightly, and he rushed forward alone. He really thought I was a soft persimmon. Although Brian looks like an embroidered pillow, his force is extremely powerful. No one in the entire legion can defeat him in a one-on-one fight. For the horde, Annabella rushed forward with the long sword waving. Brian dodged the fatal blow by sideways on the horse. Boom. Advertisement at the same time. He swept the spear in his hand, and the wooden handle of the spear hit the woman in the abdomen, knocking her off the horse. When a woman is thinking, stand up. A dagger was already on her chin. Do not move. Facing these ordinary Gaul vagrants, the battle was over soon. Tribune Rex quickly counted the casualties. Master Brian. This time we killed 3 people and injured 17 people, and Brian was powerless on the sidelines, fiddling with those ancient equipment for gold panning. Then how many prisoners and spoils did we capture? My lord, a total of 157 people have been killed, 142 people have been captured alive, and some scattered gold, which weighs about 30 pounds. Ding dong. Capture 100 homeless people alive, and get 3 free attribute points as rewards. Having said that, Brian stood up suddenly. There are actually 30 pounds of gold. It took only half a day for this group of Gaul vagrants to come here, but they found so much gold. Polo, divide up all the gold and make sure that every soldier has one piece of gold. Not only Polo, but even Rex was dumbfounded, because the commander of this army, otherwise he could completely own all the gold, but he actually wanted to give all the gold to his soldiers. Roman pound 330 g 8 grams per coin. 30 pounds of gold is worth 1,200 gold coins. The purchasing power of a gold coin is roughly equivalent to 5,000 renminbi. It's already a huge sum of money. That's right. Tell the brothers to keep their mouths shut and never tell anyone about gold. Polo suddenly realized. Brian wants to take this gold mine privately, and now he is doing everyone a favor. Brian was the second in command, and the soldiers couldn't say anything even if they didn't distribute the gold to everyone. But Brian has always been generous to his soldiers. Yes, Lord Brian. Chapter 3. After simply disposing of the loot, otherwise order the Legion to set up camp on the spot. Since he got 3 free attribute points, Brian did not hesitate to add them to his own attribute, speed. Host, Brian age, 23 position, Deputy Commander of the Roman 13th Legion. Strength, 96 Constitution, 98 Speed, 101 points. 0 free attribute points. 0 Strength, Physique, and Speed are all around 70 for a normal person. And well-trained Roman elite soldiers can reach 80. A Spartan warrior crawling from the brink of death can reach 90. And Brian's three-dimensional attributes can definitely be described as explosions. Regardless of strength, physique, or speed, they have crushed most people. Under the premise that the strength has already crushed the opponent, it is not difficult to find that increasing the speed can improve the strength the most, as the so-called martial arts in the world can only be fast. In this war of short swords and shields, speed is also extremely important. With a speed as high as 101, the opponent has just raised the short sword, and Brian's sword has already broken through the opponent's chest. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host. The single body attribute has reached 100, and the exchange function has started. The host will be given 100 points for free. In the next mission, the host can get a certain amount of points, which can be exchanged for corresponding abilities or equipment. Brian has always wanted to get this exchange function out. However, the rewards he gets each time are limited, and Brian must divide them equally among the 3 attributes. Dachin crossbow design drawing, 100,000 points design drawing of Zhugali Inu, 100,000 points song ballista design, 100,000 points flintlock blueprint, 500,000 points. Seeing these clearly marked prices, the corners of Brian's mouth twitched slightly. Did you make a mistake? Even a design drawing of a broken firearm costs 500,000 points. Host. The design drawing of Suefa gun includes the manufacturing process of black powder, which is equivalent to buying one for 2, and you can make a sure profit without losing money. Advertisement: the exchange items recommended by the system without integrity. Brian cursed secretly, then disconnected from the system. Knowing that he only has 100 points, he also recommended a flintlock design with 500,000 points to him. This is clearly to let him do more tasks. Of course, flintlock guns are not necessary now. Now Brian, as the deputy commander, has a large number of the most fierce soldiers of this era. Master Brian, the interrogation record is out. Rex walked in. Before Brian ordered Rex to interrogate the Gauls, what they were here for, and who they were. Tell me, these Gauls who dig gold under our noses. Brian, they are Gauls from the Tarego tribe. Their leader is the woman you captured today, named Antabella, the eldest daughter of the chief of the Tarego tribe. She came here to find the gold used in the sacrifice. That woman, Brian remembered her martial skills were not bad. Women who practice martial arts in this world are very rare. A tribal woman who looks for gold and uses martial arts. From Brian's point of view, she looks like a strong woman. Ding dong. Let Antabella go, and you will be rewarded with 10 points. Ding dong. Sell Antabella to a slave owner, and you will be rewarded with 20 points. Ding dong. Take Antabella as a female slave and reward 2 free attribute points. Well, this damn system. Brian twisted the bridge of his nose with his fingers, annoyed. What is the use of these 10, 20 points? Obviously not as realistic as 2 attribute points. It is clear that the system is for Brian to take Antabella as a slave girl. Seeing Brian pinching the bridge of his nose with a headache, Rex thought that Brian was afraid of the other party's identity. This is a large tribe with a large number of people. Together with some of the surrounding small tribes, it is very easy to gather 100,000 Gaul warriors. On the Roman side, there was only 1 legion. Now that Brian has captured the opposing chief's daughter, there is bound to be a big fight. Master Brian, Why don't I send someone to release that woman privately at night? Rex said worriedly from the side. He was the best solution he could think of because of his rigid thinking. Advertisement, bring in Tabula to my room at night. Brian patted Rex on the shoulder and gave a completely different answer. Sir, shouldn't you let the other party go? My dear Tribune, are you stupid? Rex froze immediately, then remembered something about Brian from the past. Brian, from the famous Cotta family in Rome. Before coming to the 13th Legion, it can be said that he was an all-round nobleman who ate, drank, prostituted, gambled, cheated, kidnapped, and stole. Although he restrained a lot after coming to the Legion, he still made the whole Legion a mess. But he has a very high prestige in the Legion, and he often leads a brigade of soldiers out to fight the autumn wind. Every time, several centurions fought for the right to follow Brian. There is a saying in the 13th Legion that if you want to make money quickly, please follow the deputy commander. Just 2 hours ago, each soldier was given 2 gold coins. Rex, being a tribune, also received 3 ducats of gold. But this is likely to cause a war between us and Gaul. Wouldn't war be very good? You can make a lot of money. When it comes to war, Brian thinks of lots of gold. Send people back to the Legion and ask them to transfer 2 more people from the brigade. Now Brian has a team of 560 people here. If 2 more brigades were transferred, there would be 1,500 people. Why call so many people? Rex was a little dumbfounded. After all, privately mobilizing the strength of a brigade is considered exceeding the authority, but only the commander of the entire army has such authority. Now Brian has to mobilize the other 2 teams. As a qualified soldier, Rex cannot question the commander's order. Yes, Deputy Army Commander. Brian reminded coldly that this subordinate talked too much. Brian made up his mind that if this guy talked too much, let him go back to escort the slaves. Late at night after washing the waves, the Gaul woman was sent to Brian's tent. Chapter 4. Antebella changed into a long Roman dress, coupled with her slender Gaul figure. It gave people a very beautiful enjoyment. But her hands were still bound with ropes. What are you going to do? Antebella is wary of Brian. While Brian was looking at the other party, he clicked on her attributes at the same time. Name, Antebella. Age, 19 years old. Identity, chief daughter of Tarago tribe. Strength, 61 constitution, 65 speed, 71 ambition. Unify all of Gaul. The 3-dimensional attribute is relatively medium range, but consider that the other party is just a woman. If this attribute is placed on a man's body, it is quite satisfactory, but if it appears on a woman's body, it is considered a high match. From this, it can be seen that this woman is not ordinary. Brian couldn't help but look up at him. The ambition is to unify Gaul. Now the whole of Gaul is a large and small tribe, a mess, without the slightest cohesion. Since the birth of the Gaul nation, no one has ever unified Gaul. And the woman in front of him actually had this idea. What am I doing? Please pay attention to your tone of voice. Now you are my slave. You. Antebella has known her fate since she was arrested. All Gauls captured by the Roman legions were either killed or sold into slavery. For a woman with such an outstanding appearance, she knew what was going to happen to her. I just didn't expect this day to come so soon. But then Brian untied her from the rope. The moment the rope was untied, Antebella, punching Brian directly. Advertisement immediately afterwards, there was a series of sounds of objects being smashed in the tent. A Roman soldier wanted to go in and check it out. However, the centurion beside him, Polo, grabbed his shoulder and made a silent gesture. Brian had a habit for a long time that is not interested in women who are submissive. He feels that he likes the feelings generated by free communication. Soon, the sound in the tent became much quieter. My father will never let you go. Antebella looked at Brian viciously. Your father is the chief of that tribe. Sooner or later, I will let him prostrate at my feet. Brian snorted softly, ignoring the woman in front of him. You, let me tell you, you are just my slave now. As a slave, you are not qualified to negotiate terms with me. Brian said viciously. Of course, it's not to completely scare the other party, but he really did it, and most of the Roman nobles did the same. Brian knew the other side would give in. After all, Brian is still 10 points young, only 23 years old. Whether in Rome or Gaul, he is a standard handsome guy, and he is still in a high position. Don't look at her blonde hair and blue eyes. But in ancient Rome this was a symbol of lowliness. And her ambition is to unify Gaul. If she is sold as a slave, there is really no hope at all. There may be a glimmer of hope in staying with the Roman general. Thinking of this, Antebella shed tears heartbroken. but nodded at the same time. Centurion Polo stood outside the tent, smiling at the surrounding soldiers. He knew that Chief Brian had surrendered another slave, and also an extremely valuable slave, the daughter of the tribal chief. There are many things to do in this Gaul region. Since he went to bed very late last night, he had to get up and go out to inspect the barracks. Now he still has many important things to do. Ding dong. Take Antebella as a slave girl and reward her with 2 attribute points. Advertisement got these 2 attribute points. Brian added directly to strength. Host, Brian age, 23 position, Deputy Commander of the Roman 13th Legion. Strength, 98 Constitution, 98 Speed, 101 points. 100 free attribute points. 0 hearing the word slave girl, Antebella didn't care at all and smiled charmingly. Dear master, love me again, and then I will tell you a secret. Secret? Seeing Antebella's perfect figure, Brian pounced on it again. The Roman 13th Legion stationed in the Red River Valley, 3 infantry brigades were taken away by Brian. Now there are only 7 infantry brigades left in the entire army. Cadius, head of the 13th Legion, just returned from Barcelona. The battalion chief of the Legion told him that Brian, the deputy head of the Legion, took 3 brigades and entered the Red River Valley. What? Isn't that local ruffian causing trouble again? Heard that Brian led 3 large groups into the Red River Valley. On the other side of the Red River Valley, there is a powerful tribe in Gaul. Brian wouldn't just challenge them with 3 teams, would he? Master Brian said that he wants to fortify the Red River Valley to prevent the Gaul tribesmen from attacking us. Fortify? Also prevent the Gaul tribe savages from attacking. It would be nice if he didn't take the initiative to attack the Gaul tribe. Master Legion, Lord Brian seems to have raided a small group of Gauls and captured hundreds of slaves. Legion Commander Cadius. This damn guy dared to attack the Gaul tribe without authorization and provoke trouble. Chapter 5. Although he was angry, but Cadius had no intention of punishing Brian. The entire 13th Legion has been stationed here for several years. According to the requirements of the Senate, it is not allowed to take the initiative to attack Gaul, so as not to provoke a war between Rome and Gaul tribes. After Marius reformed the Senate in order to prevent the generals from supporting themselves. All possible foreign wars are prohibited. Therefore, the 13th Legion has been stationed here for several years and has not failed to catch slaves until Brian came here to serve as the deputy head of the Legion half a year ago. Every now and then, some Gaul vagrants who were alone were arrested. Regarding this matter, the Senate has repeatedly asked. Brian claimed to capture the Gallic soldiers who attempted to attack the Legion. Moreover, as the son of the Coda family, Brian has a very high connection in the Senate and has a marriage relationship with the current consul Caesar, uncle of Caesar. Every time the Senate brought up this matter, it became a mess, and then nothing happened. And not only the 13th Legion, but also other legions in the empire that were close to the barbarians. This kind of thing also happened from time to time. You must know that every legion leader is a veteran of the Senate. So invisibly, Brian has dozens of supporters. Take someone to ask Brian immediately, what exactly is he going to do with 3 brigades? Legion Chief Cadius was still a little worried, so he said to a legion tribune beside him, it's no big deal to capture hundreds of Gallic slaves. At most, it's going to the Senate to argue. But Brian took 3 battalions with him. This guy doesn't really intend to take the initiative to attack the Gaul tribe, does he? You must know that the Tarago tribe on the opposite side of the Red River Valley has a population of more than 200,000. It is easy to gather 50,000 to 60,000 troops. No matter how powerful the Roman legion is, it is difficult to fight against a force 10 times its own. If the Red River Valley on the opposite side, the Gaul tribes, and the concentrated tribes' forces rushed over, the 13th Legion might not be able to withstand it. Advertisement, even if they win, it will be a miserable victory. Cadius could not afford to start a war rashly. So now he has to figure out, what the hell is Brian trying to do? At this moment Brian resumed his fling with Antebella. Now tell me your secret. Brian pinched Antebella's smooth chin with one hand and said, while the other hand was playing with the softness of the chest. Okay, I'll tell you now that my father, Rorktos, is seriously ill. The wizard in the tribe says he won't be able to see the sun for the next month. Antebella spoke without any emotion, but instead held Brian tightly in her arms. The chief of the opposite tribe is dying, which is indeed an important message. But with the power of the 13th Legion alone, it is difficult to shake a tribe with such a population. What's more, Brian is only the deputy army commander now, and the power he can mobilize is extremely limited. Although he knew that the other chief was dying, it didn't mean much to Brian. Brian motioned for the other to continue. I, Antebella, also have the right to inherit the tribe. You mean, you want to be the chief of this Gallic tribe? Well, as long as you support me, I will definitely become the chief of this tribe. Antebella knew that this was her last chance. If the man in front of her sold her as a slave, she would never have the chance to return to Gaul, and it would be nonsense to become the leader of the tribe. And now that she was captured by Brian, it was both a crisis and an opportunity for her. Roman soldiers in this era could crush all the barbarians around them. If she can get Brian's support, it will greatly increase her possibility of becoming the heir of the tribe. Then what good will I do? Brian is a realistic person. He will never make a move without interests. You can have me and a tribe of over 200,000 people. Advertisement: when I defeat the Tarago tribe, I can still get your tribe. Brian has always had his own plans. That is to become the emperor of the entire Roman Republic. The first step must be to start with the conquest of Gaul, just like Julius Caesar did. With the victory of conquering Gaul, he returned to Rome and easily gained control of Rome. Conquering Gaul was something Brian had to do sooner or later. Brian, the deputy head of the army, you seem to be the deputy head of an army. If you want to defeat our tribe, it will take at least 2 to 3 years. Before that, Antebella already knew Brian's identity and official position. With Brian's current status, it really needs a wave of operations, killing the army leader first, before he can defeat the high-rise tribe in front of him. And I can shorten this time for you. When I control the entire tribe, I will provide you with a steady stream of personnel and gold. As you have seen, there is a very large gold mine in this valley. At this point, Brian was lost in thought. Ding dong. Please choose one. Negate the other party's proposal. Accept her as a female slave, and reward 200 points. 2. Negate the other party's proposal. Sell it, and reward 1 attribute point. 3. Agree to the other party's proposal. Cooperate with it. Return it to Gaul, and reward 1,000 points. The safest way right now is to directly deny the other party's proposal, take her as a female slave, or sell her, and of course the rewards are extremely limited. As for the third option, it is to agree to Antebella's proposal. Although it is accompanied by extremely high risks, the benefits are also very high. Leaving aside the 1,000 points, if the population of the Gaul tribe can be brought in to 10,000 to 20,000 people to mine gold, then Brian can use this share of funds to quickly master the 13th Legion. After thinking for a long time, Brian chose 3. Very good. I accept your proposal. From now on, you are no longer my slave, but my collaborator, Miss Antebella. P.S. For the new book, I beg all the readers for flowers. Chapter 6. Soon, 9 centurions gathered under Brian's account. Normally, a cohort consisted of 3 centurions, leading young soldiers, middle-aged soldiers, and old soldiers respectively. Now, Brian has 3 cohorts, exactly 9 centurions. The centurions of the 1st Brigade each received 3 gold coins yesterday. This made the other 6 centurions who had just arrived envious. You know, the purchasing power of a gold coin is equivalent to 5,000 renminbi. This is a considerable income, and these centurions are discussing whether the Legion should continue to advance. As the chief centurion, Polo, Lord Brian, did he mention to you about continuing to attack? The centurion couldn't help looking curiously at the celebrity beside Brian. Although Polo is a centurion, he is also very stubborn in eating, drinking, and having fun. For a long time, he was not favored by other colleagues. However, because of the same smell as Brian, it has been reused by Brian. Hearing the inquiries from other colleagues, Polo instantly felt dizzy. They raided here yesterday, and the high-rise tribes on the opposite side could not be unvigilant. Obviously, the best time to attack has been lost. Moreover, it is simply wishful thinking to attack the Gaul tribe with a population of 200,000 based on the strength of the 3 brigades in their hands. Master Brian would never do such a loss-making business. But Polo couldn't think of Brian's purpose for a while. I really don't know that. Just when the centurions were wondering, Brian walked in from the outside. Master Brian. The centurions exclaimed loudly, especially the 6 new centurions. They didn't get any benefit. Okay. Brian nodded, enjoying himself, being chanted my lord. Polo. What happened to the slaves caught yesterday? Polo thought otherwise, that he planned to sell these slaves, so he said hastily, Lord Brian, the 140 slaves are all very good. Will you sell them as usual, my lord? Advertisement. Hearing the number 140, Brian couldn't help but frown slightly. When Rex reported to him yesterday, he caught 142 people. Now there are 2 missing for no reason, but otherwise they didn't continue to ask. The 2 missing slaves were either played to death by their unscrupulous men, or they were seriously injured and died of illness at night. No, I'm going to let them all go. Brian shook his head and said flatly, What? What? All the while, the soldiers following Brian were a little caught off guard. How can you spit out the meat in your mouth? Now Rome is in a period of relative peace and rarely engages in foreign wars, so the price of slaves remains high. The price of an ordinary slave has reached nearly 100 dinars, silver coins, 1 gold coin, ali, equals 25 silver coins, dinar, equals 100 copper coins, sestals, 100 silver coins are equivalent to 4 gold coins. So these 140 slaves can also be sold for 560 gold coins. This is a pretty good income. You must know that a qualified Roman soldier's annual income is only 200 silver coins and 8 gold coins. Release all? Polo couldn't react a little. Yes, let them all go, and give them another day's rations. What? Now the centurions were all dumbfounded. Brian, who has always eaten people without spitting out their bones, actually let go of all the slaves he got. Soon, the 140 slaves captured yesterday had been assembled, and Annabella has changed back to the previous Gaul armor. However, the way she walked did indeed have some hesitation. After all, after a night of ups and downs, it is impossible for her to be unaffected. Brian handed Annabella the Gaul sword himself. At the same time, he didn't forget to touch the other's plump buttocks with his hands. Advertisement Annabella didn't show any resistance, letting Brian think. And the surrounding centurions were surprised from ear to ear. The action just now was too intimate, not like a master and a slave at all, more like a couple. This Gallic beauty conquered their great deputy commander in just one night. I hate it. All the soldiers under your command are watching. Annabella whispered softly. Just watch and watch, what's the big deal? Brian said indifferently. By the way, you should contact me often after you go back. I will. At the critical moment, I will let you ask me to do it. Now Annabella, these 2 big brothers control most of the tribe's force, and now that the old chief is about to die of illness, it is too late for Annabella to cultivate his own power. Now the only thing she can rely on is Brian and his army. Okay, let's go back. While the centurions were not paying attention, Brian squeezed the other's breast again. Blonde hair and blue eyes were a sign of lowliness in ancient Rome. But Brian is a time traveler and doesn't have this concept. In addition, Annabella was extremely useful, so naturally, she was no longer treated as a lowly female slave. Annabella gave Brian a light kiss on the cheek, and then led his men away. Ding dong. Agree with Antabella's proposal, cooperate with her, return her to Gaul, and reward 1,000 points. When the other party walked away, there was a sound of system confirmation. Now Brian's points have reached 1,100 points. At this moment, Master Deputy Legion Commander Rex's voice came. Brian turned his head and saw Rex, the tribune of the Legion, beside Lucius, the tribune of the Legion. Legion tribunes, usually nobles of the knight class, have a much higher status than centurions, similar to the staff officers of later generations. Tribune Lucius is a close confidant of Legion Chief Cadius. Master Brian, hello? Chapter 7. Facing Brian, Lucius and Rex made a standard Roman military salute for the deputy commander. Place your right hand on your left shoulder first, then swing forward. Seeing the other party salute, Brian reluctantly made a Roman military salute. In order to maintain the status and prestige in the military, these small etiquettes still have to be observed. Okay, dear reporter Lucius, what news did you bring this time? As the confidant of Legion Chief Cadius, every time Lucius comes, he conveys the orders and opinions of the Legion Chief. Master Brian, the Legion leader would like to understand the purpose of your mobilizing the troops of the 3 brigades to come here. Lucius' tone softened, not daring to look directly at Brian. Not only he, but even the centurions behind Brian were curious about Brian's purpose. With their strength, they are not enough to challenge the mighty Tarago tribe. What's more, just now, Brian let go of more than 100 people from the Gaul tribe, which made the centurions under him confused. Ahem, I mobilized so many troops, of course I am stationed here. Brian cleared his throat and spoke in the words he had prepared. Stationed here? Could it be that the Gauls are going to attack our army again? Lucius asked, puzzled. Raid the Roman legion. This is Brian's usual method. Every time a Gaul is caught, it is said that this is a Gaul soldier preparing to attack the Roman legion. Isn't the Senate forbidden to take the initiative to attack, so defense is always okay, right? Of course. Just yesterday, I found a small group of Gauls preparing to attack the Legion and led the heroic Roman soldiers to defeat them. Really, all the centurions around showed such eyes as expected. Then, Master Brian, do you have any plans to continue attacking? Lucius continued to ask. This is what Legion Chief Cadius repeatedly asked Brian to ask. Advertisement. Although Brian only has 3 brigades in his hands, maybe he really dared to attack the Gaul tribe on the opposite side. Of course not. I lead the troops to stay here to prevent them from attacking the Legion. Brian shook his head. Always arrogant and bold, he did not dare to take 1,000 people to attack a tribe with a population of more than 200,000. That's good. I'll convey your meaning to the Legion commander immediately. Lucius nodded. Although he knew what Brian was like, but the troops in his hands were too small, and it was impossible to launch such a suicide attack. In fact, Brian wasn't planning to attack either. The population gap is really too big. Also, this is my handwritten letter. Please forward it to the leader of the Legion. Brian put the letter he had prepared in advance into the bamboo tube, sealed the opening of the tube with sealing wax, and handed it to Lucius. Lucius took the bamboo tube, made a standard Roman military salute, then turned and left. This time his task has been completed, as long as it is confirmed that Brian is not attacking the Gaul tribe on the opposite side. Okay, all the staff go down to the river to fish for gold for me. After Lucius left, Brian turned to look at his centurion and tribunes. Those new centurions and tribunes were still a little surprised. After all, Brian blocked the news before, so he couldn't spread the news about gold. But things like secrets can never be blocked. Now more than 1,000 Roman soldiers live together. It was only a matter of time before the matter of gold leaked out. Gold! Gold! The centurions couldn't help but screamed. And some centurions and tribunes showed such expressions. Just yesterday, Brian distributed at least 2 gold coins to each soldier. Advertisement. This is an ordinary Roman soldier with 3 months' salary. It turns out that there are gold mines in this small river. Seeing the astonished gazes of his subordinates, Brian paused and continued. 90% of all the gold salvaged in Xiaohe will belong to the Legion, and 10% can be divided equally among the brothers. Before the words fell, Polo led the centurions and cheered. Lord Brian, long live. Don't underestimate this little 10% gold. According to the regulations of the Roman Legion, the gold should belong to the Legion. Brian was willing to spend 10% to reward the Legionnaires, so he won the support of a lot of low-level soldiers. As the saying goes, a soldier who doesn't want to kill the army commander is not a good nobleman. Brian has always had a plan, that is, to assassinate the Legion commander Cadius, and then he will become the Legion commander himself. However, according to Roman law, the head of the Legion can only be held by the elders of the Senate. Now Brian is not a member of the Senate. Even if he kills Cadius, a new Legion leader will come to take office. In addition, Cadius has not been in charge of things, as if he was throwing his hands away as the shopkeeper. So Brian let him live until now. Once Brian entered the Senate, it was the death of the current Legion master. Okay, take your people. Let me see how much gold is in this small river. Under the lure of gold, the entire Legion, only 3 brigades, immediately took action. Roman soldiers cut down the surrounding trees to make the simplest gold panning equipment. It took only 2 hours to complete the gold panning equipment for a total of 1,500 people. Then those soldiers who were used to handling daggers and killing people rushed towards Xiaohe like crazy. P.S. I beg all readers to send flowers. Chapter 8. Did Brian really not intend to attack the other side? Legion Commander Cadius said to Lucius. Yes, Lord Brian promised that he would not attack the Gaul tribes, and he also brought a letter. While speaking, Lucius took out Brian's letter. It's rare for that fellow to write to me. Cadius removed the sealing wax from the bamboo tube and took out the papyrus inside. Don't say it. Although Brian looks like a hooligan, his handwriting is very beautiful. Dear Cadius, I discovered a small gold mine in the Red River Valley, so I mobilized 3 brigades here. According to the old rules, I will give you 5 and you 4, and the remaining 1 will be given to the soldiers. Cadius put the papyrus aside. Brian, the rogue, got lucky and found a gold mine in the Red River Valley. Since he wasn't going to attack the Gaul tribe, Cadius naturally didn't ask too much, and Brian promised to give him 40% of it. At first, Cadius thought Brian had just discovered a small gold mine. However, no one expected that Castile would become the largest gold mine in the entire Roman Republic 14 years later. The Red River Valley is just the tip of the iceberg of this gold mine. At the same time, Antebella also returned to the Gallic tribes. Oh, isn't this my dear sister? and Tabala's elder brother, Tais, greeted him first. In fact, he saw that there was something wrong with his own sister, because as early as yesterday, he had received the exact news that his sister was in the Red River Valley and encountered a surprise attack by the Roman legion. There was a whole group of Roman soldiers on the other side, and only one person on his side escaped back by luck. The commander of the Roman legions was the infamous Brian. In the past 6 months, nearly thousands of tribal homeless people have been captured by him and sold as slaves. Either way, Brian's reputation is pretty bad. Advertisement on the Gaul side, Brian is simply synonymous with hell devils. It was a miracle that the Gauls who fell into his hands could come back alive. I escaped. Don't get in my way. I'm going to see my father. Facing her big brother, Annabella said coldly, because Tails tried to her sister more than once. Looking at Antabala's almost perfect back, Tails licked his mouth with his tongue. What a show. When the old man dies, I will be the chief of the tribe, and sooner or later I will get you into my bed. Come to the tribe's largest tent. Here lies the hero of the entire tribe, Roctors, at the age of 60, suffering from severe pneumonia. The wizard in the tribe had predicted that he would not survive this month. Roctors recognized at a glance that it was his daughter, Antabala. Bella, is it really you? I heard yesterday that you were captured by the Roman legion. Antabella knelt down beside the bed and firmly held her father's hand. It's me, your daughter. I'm back. Just come back. You have to be careful with your 2 big brothers. Father, don't worry. I will protect myself. Antabella also thought silently in her heart. Not only will I protect myself, but I will also become the leader of the entire tribe. Because she got the support of that man who is greedy, but holds a heavy army and is powerful. Achoo! Brian, who was supervising soldiers looking for gold in the river, suddenly let out a big sneeze. Could it be another noble lady who misses me? Hearing Brian's soliloquy, Polo immediately greeted him with a shy face. Master Brian, it's been a long time since you took your brothers to put out the fire. Advertisement, didn't I give you 3 gold coins yesterday? When you get back to Barcelona, go find those wild women yourself. 3 gold coins are already equivalent to 2 months' wages for a centurion. Haha. Brian's answer immediately attracted the shouts of the surrounding centurions. There is no other reason. The gold reserves in this small river are simply astonishingly high. In just one noon, more than 200 pounds of gold had been fished out of the river. Soldiers are motivated thanks to Brian's incentive program. Brian found that although the enthusiasm of the soldiers is still full, but the gold produced is gradually decreasing. After all, the amount of gold exposed on the riverbed is limited. If you want to further increase the production of gold, you must have professional equipment for deep mining. Tribune Rex also noticed this. He is different from those centurions. He is a nobleman of the knight class. Master Brian, the amount of gold on this section of the riverbed is gradually decreasing, and we may be mining all of it in less than 10 days. Brian nodded. If you want to get more gold, you must use more advanced professional equipment and increase mining efforts. Rex, tell me what you think. My lord, I think so. If we want to increase the amount of gold mining, we must purchase professional mining equipment, and professionals will lead the slaves to work. After all, it is not so glorious to use legionnaires to do private work. You have a good idea. I have had this idea for a long time. Brian paused and said shamelessly, we will mine this section of the river for another 3 days, and then we will seal it off, return to the city of Barcelona, and buy professional equipment and slaves to mine. Chapter 9. 3 days later, Brian returned to the 13th Legion's garrison with 3 brigades and 1,000 pounds of gold. As soon as he returned to the camp, he ordered his infantry to mint the gold into gold coins. Because gold is the equivalent currency. A gold coin weighs 8 grams. So 8 grams of gold is worth as much as a gold coin. The Roman Republic allowed nobles to mint gold coins in private. Soon 1,000 pounds of gold turned into approximately 41,000 gold coins, equivalent to 10 talents. 1 talent equals 100 pounds equals 33,000 grams. Seeing so many gold coins, Legion Chief Cadius was dumbfounded. At first, Cadius, you thought that although there was gold in the Red River Valley, you just didn't expect so much. 3 brigades of Roman soldiers held the most primitive gold panning tools and managed to pan out 10 talents of gold within 3 days. These are roughly equivalent to half a year's military expenditure of the entire Legion. It takes about 50,000 to 60,000 gold coins for the Legion to pay the soldiers every year, plus the cost of food and clothing for the entire Legion. It is impossible to live without 70,000 to 80,000 gold coins a year. Is there any gold in the Red River Valley? Seeing so many gold coins, Legion Chief Cadius' first thought was to pull the entire Legion over to mine gold. There are more, but there are not many. Brian spread his hands and said, the fact is exactly the same. What he led the 3 legions got was the dog's head gold all over the small river. Brian firmly believes that there must be rich reserves of gold or underground in the entire Red River Valley. However, professional equipment and a large amount of manpower are required to mine it, which will undoubtedly increase the cost. Leading legionnaires to mine gold is no longer a profitable business. In the past few days alone, in order to appease the soldiers, Brian had to pay 10% of the gold, which was 4,100 gold coins. This was quite a sum of money, averaging 2 gold coins per Roman soldier. You know, the salary of a Roman soldier is only about 8 gold coins a year. Advertisement: it is obviously uneconomical to use soldiers to mine gold. The best way is to buy a large number of slaves and let them mine for free. How do you know if you don't try? Cadius obviously didn't believe Brian's answer. After all, the golden coins are right in front of you, and if you say no, there will be no more. Cadius, 54 years old this year, is considered an advanced age in ancient Rome. I don't have much passion for foreign wars anymore. However, there is an inexplicable desire for the pursuit of wealth. Before Brian went out to play the autumn wind, some of the wealth he earned would be shared with him, just like this time. He turned a blind eye to many things. Privately mobilized the troops of the 3 brigades. If they were placed on others, they would have been crucified long ago. Anyway, the Red River Valley is there. Old man, you can lead the team there yourself? Brian shrugged helplessly. Anyway, the Red River Valley is there. If you don't believe it, you can dig there. Oh. Cadius looked up at Brian. For a long time, there has been an unwritten rule in Rome. That is, whoever discovers the mine belongs to whom. Because the Red River Valley is not in Rome, but belongs to Gaul, Brian, as the first nobleman to discover gold mines, has the ownership of gold mines. Right now, Brian actually let Cadius go digging. You really allow it? Cadius still couldn't believe his ears, and asked further. You must know that his deputy Brian is notoriously greedy and lustful. Of course, you are the head of the 13th Legion, but I have a small condition. That is, if you dig a gold mine, I will give you some points. Okay, according to the old rules, I will take the lead this time. I will be 5 and you will be 4. The 2 have a habit of working together for a long time. That is, they get 5 or 4 points for property, and the remaining 1 point is given to the soldiers. Okay, that's it, but I'm going to take a lineup of soldiers into the city of Barcelona. A brigade can be divided into 3 formations, namely young soldiers, middle-aged soldiers, and old soldiers, and is led by a centurion. Barcelona City? What are you going to do with your troops? Advertisement: Cadius had a bad feeling. This guy will definitely cause trouble if he leads troops into the city. Roman law provided, if not, the order of the local governor or legionary master. The Roman army cannot enter the provincial capital city where the province is located. The city of Barcelona is the capital of the Iberian province. Of course, it is to buy some equipment and develop the Red River Valley. I suspect that when they have rich gold reserves underground. Brian snapped his fingers. Although Cadius is often uncomfortable with some of Ryan's practices, as long as it involves making money, the 2 people's opinions will be surprisingly consistent. The Roman Republic provided less than 20,000 gold coins for each legion's annual military expenditure. This money is not even enough to eat, let alone pay wages. Often the senior generals of the legion support the legion out of their own pockets. Before Mario's reform, citizens were all equipped with their own weapons to join the legion. And before that, a small legion was implemented, and a standard Roman legion did not exceed 4,000 people. After Marius' reform, the recruitment system was implemented, and the legion provided weapons and equipment. And the formation of the legion has expanded to a large corps of 5,000 or 6,000 people. However, the military expenditure provided by the Senate for each legion has not changed, only a handful of 20,000 gold coins. The 20,000 gold coins not only need to buy equipment, but also pay for the food, clothing, housing, transportation, and wages of the soldiers. In order to control the military power, senior generals often have to pay out of their own pockets. So both Brian and Cadius have an inexplicable attachment to money. Because as long as there is enough wealth, the legion can be maintained. With soldiers in hand, you can maintain your noble status. In Rome, nobles with soldiers and nobles without soldiers have different status. Okay, you can lead a line of soldiers into the city of Barcelona, but you can't cause trouble for me. Brian spread his hands helplessly. When did I get you into trouble? Those previous troubles. I didn't use my personal relationship to get rid of them. Chapter 10. The sun had just risen, and 2 teams of troops walked out from the 13th Legion's garrison. Cadius, the head of the Legion, led the troops of 3 brigades and entered the Red River Valley northward. Brian, the deputy head of the army, led a lineup of spearmen to march south, preparing to go to the city of Barcelona. It is the largest city in the province of Iberia. Spearmen line up. Old soldiers line up. The number ranges from 60 to 120, named because the main weapon is a shotgun, also known as the reserve team. There is a proverb in ancient Rome. When something develops into the reserve team, it is a metaphor for the moment when things are extremely urgent. Master Brian, why did you give up the Red River Valley to the Legion commander? According to the regulations, you can monopolize the Red River Valley? Centurion Polo looked at Brian in confusion. That's not at all Brian's approach. Polo, how much gold did we dig up in the last day? Probably 40 or 50 pounds. The amount of golden dog heads exposed on the riverbed is limited. 2 days ago, the troops of the 3 brigades were assembled and nearly 900 pounds of gold were dug out. But on the 3rd day, there were only a handful of gold dug up. If you want more gold, you must use professional equipment to dig deep underground. The Roman legion was a field army. Although there were many skilled craftsmen in the legion, they were unable to produce professional equipment. Isn't that enough? Give him a legion, and he probably won't be able to dig out much. Then Brian gave a wicked smile and looked at the centurion beside him. Of course, without professional equipment, it will be difficult to dig out enough gold. There is another reason for Brian to share the Red River Valley with Cadius. That is, after the opponent relaxed his vigilance at the right time, Brian directly killed him from behind, thus gaining control of the entire army. My dear centurion, don't you like those girls in Xiaoyao Cave? Men come out to serve as soldiers, one for money and the other for women. As soon as women were mentioned, Polo immediately regained his spirits. Some time ago, a group of Gaul slaves were captured, and there were a few good-looking ones. Advertisement, but after the leader of the other party was finished playing with by the deputy army commander, he ordered them all to be released. Polo has not put out the fire for a long time. And during this period of time following Brian, Polo made a lot of money, a total of 7 gold coins. How could I not like it? Their figures are so soft. While speaking, Polo's eyes revealed a greedy gaze, as if there was really a beautiful woman in front of him. Okay, stop daydreaming and move on. The province of Iberia is the later Spain, with a temperate marine climate in the north and a Mediterranean climate in the south. Castile, where Brian lives, happens to have a temperate maritime climate. There are lush trees here, and there are often some small tribes of barbarians who rob pedestrians on the road. But Brian wasn't worried about that at all. He had a lineup of Roman elite soldiers. In the middle of the night, the troops were stationed by the small river. There is still a day's journey to reach the city of Barcelona. A mile away, there were bursts of shouts of killing, and the surrounding woods were also set ablaze. Master Brian, there is a situation outside. Polo shouted as he stood by Brian's tent. And Brian rushed out in just plain clothes. No time for his gloriously muscular plate armor now. What about Polo? Brian looked up and saw Polo holding a weak servant in his hand. And Polo threw him directly on the ground. This is our great Brian, the deputy commander of the army. If you have anything to say, hurry up. The servant was obviously frightened and stuttered. My lord, hurry up and save my wife. Your wife? Brian touched his smooth chin and said, in ancient Rome, the status of women was extremely low. Advertisement: the one who can be called a wife should be either a nobleman or a noble lady of a businessman. Yes, I implore the general to send troops to save my wife. It's too late, but it's too late. The servant kept kowtowing on the ground. How many people are there on the other side? I can't see the darkness clearly. There are at least dozens of people, and each of them is painted with a special color, which is difficult to distinguish in the dark. A thought popped into Brian's head. Blue Iberians, they will paint special paint on their body, so that the whole body presents a purplish blue. This color is the most difficult to distinguish in the dark. So the Blue Iberians often use this method to loot or assassinate in the dark. Polo, wake up everyone. I want to see, are those Blue Iberians human or ghosts? Yes. Deputy Legion Commander. Great God Jupiter, please save poor Yulia. A lady in the carriage was praying nonstop. Just 10 minutes ago, Yulia was attacked by a group of people, and Yulia sent his cronies to ask for help from the nearby fire. And there were only about 10 followers left beside her, and there were dozens of ghost-like guys on the outside who couldn't see their faces clearly. "Don't touch that woman. I want to live." At this moment, a bald man left, and everyone stepped forward. Like everyone else, he has a special blue paint all over his body. So what about the boss and the others? The others are worthless. Kill them all. As long as that noble lady is enough. The giant man gave an order, and dozens of blue Iberians rushed towards the carriage. At this moment, there was a burst of tight steps from a distance. It seems that the army is on the march. Chapter 11. A horn sounded. Everyone is very familiar with this sound. It is the horn of the Roman legion's attack. Damn it, it's the Roman legion. Who would have imagined that in this impoverished forest, they would encounter the Roman legion? The Roman legion generally had its own fixed station, either in an important big city or a border town. With the horn, soon a Roman army appeared in front of everyone. Thank God Jupiter. The noble lady actually wept with joy in the carriage, as some of the surrounding trees have been ignited by the fire. Brian could see clearly. Sure enough, it was almost the same as he guessed. A group of blue Iberians surrounded a group of travelers. There are probably 30 or 40 corpses on the ground now. "General, please save my master." The servant who reported the message at the beginning was beside Brian and said excitedly. Because of his master, he was still there and unharmed. "Okay." Brian nodded and waved. The entire spearmen lined up to form a shield formation and moved forward. Roar. The leader of the blue Iberian roared and rushed towards Brian's phalanx. But courage is commendable. In the case of roughly the same number of people, the Roman legion is crushing in the face of satisfaction. Although these blue Iberians are tall, they don't have any armor on their bodies, and their weapon is just a small machete. Boom. Soon the blue Iberians collided with the legion's large shield. And the standard action of a good Roman soldier, it is to use the large shield to block the opponent's first wave of attack, and then stab out with the short spear in hand. The action is simple and effective. Advertisement: in the first wave alone, nearly 40 blue Iberians were killed. It is worthy of being a qualified war slaughter machine. Although Brian only had 100 Roman soldiers in his hands. But in just a few seconds, the blue Iberian had already been killed. This is the crushing of equipment, system, and physical fitness. Ding dong. Please choose. At this moment, the system issued a new multiple-choice question. 1. Go back to the campsite immediately and reward 100 points. 2. After striking up a conversation with the lady, leave and reward 1 attribute point. 3. After striking up a conversation with a noble lady, spend a good night with her to award 3 attribute points. I wipe. This time Brian wasn't in a hurry to make a choice. God knows what the other lady looks like. If young women in their 20s and 30s don't come, it's okay. If it was a middle-aged woman in her 50s or 60s, Brian felt that she would suffer. Although Brian is also an impatient person, he also has choices. At least wait until you see the other person's appearance before making a choice. As Brian thought about it, the lady on the opposite side has already stepped out of the carriage. It was a beautiful young woman about 30 years old in a white gauze dress. Under the recommendation of the servant, the young woman came to Brian and performed the courtesy of a lady. Thank you, Commander Brian, for your rescue. The servant had already told Julia Brian's identity before. The deputy commander of the 13th Legion. Seeing the young and beautiful face of the other party, Brian chose 3 without hesitation. As for whether it can be completed or not, that's 2 things to say. Let's make a choice first. It is my honor to rescue the noble lady from the gangsters. Brian got off his horse, half-kneeled in front of Julia, gently lifted her right hand, and kissed the back of her hand. This move made Julia very touched. You know, since her husband died, she hasn't been touched by a man for nearly 3 years. Brian was the first man to touch her after her husband died. Advertisement, but Julia didn't refuse, but let Brian gently kiss her hand. Don't you know your wife's name? Brian asked in a very awkward Chinese tone. My wife is Mrs. Julia of the Scipio family. The servant next to Mrs. Julia introduced it. The Scipio family was an ancient family in the Roman Republic. There were many famous generals from the ancestors of this family, and Scipio even defeated a generation of famous generals. Hannibal. Little Scipio even directly destroyed Carthage and sprinkled salt on their land, making the country irreversible and unable to turn around. Oh, so it's Mrs. Julia from the noble Scipio family. I was late just now and surprised you. Brian bowed again and said, being a gentleman, General Brian should be the one to say thank you. Julia also looked at Brian with admiration. Brian is young, handsome, strong, and has military power in his hands. Master Brian, you should invite Mrs. Yulia back to our residence. This place is really desolate. Polo had already seen what Brian was thinking. If he didn't want to get on the other side, he would never have done so much red tape. That's right. Why did I forget? Brian patted himself on the back of the head and then said suddenly, Polo, leave 20 people behind to clean up the battlefield. See if there are any left alive. Yes. Then Brian turned around and said to Yulia, this place is too bloody and dirty, not worthy of your identity. Please come with me back to our army's temporary station. At the same time, he extended his right hand towards Yulia. Then there will be Lord General Lau. Yulia was also very happy to grab Brian's right hand. Then Brian turned over, picked him up and put him on his horse. This move stunned Yulia's followers. As for Brian's soldiers, it was as if nothing had happened, because it's so normal for them. As early as in the city of Rome, Brian often went to the big families and hooked up with the ladies. Chapter 12. Only a short mile away, and soon everyone returned to the previous temporary station. Yulia went straight to Brian's private tent. When Brian lowered the curtain of the tent, Brian knew that the woman in front of him was not a simple person. She was obviously someone who had seen the world. Lady, in order to hurry up, I didn't wear the muscular plate armor just now, but simple leather armor. Brian, I know you. Playboy of Rome. While speaking, Yulia unbuttoned the leather armor for Brian. Very understanding. And the other person seems to know Brian. Soon Brian's leather armor was removed. This woman should not look like a simple character. If the tiger doesn't show its power, you will treat it as a sick cat and turn against you. After all, in this remote place, there are still people who know him as a playboy. Now the world only knows that he is a mighty ancient Roman general. You actually know me? Brian was puzzled. The lady in front of him knew him, but he didn't know her. Of course, the hooligans of the Cotta family. Who doesn't know the biggest guild, gangsters in Rome? Yulia looked at Brian with beautiful eyes. Seems to know Brian like the back of his hand. This made Brian very unhappy, because he doesn't have the slightest understanding of the woman in front of him. Just like two boxers in the ring, one knows the other's movement strength skills like the back of his hand, while the other is worthless at all. Tell me everything about you, or I'll make you look good. I won't tell you. Let's see what you can do with me. Yulia stuck out her tongue playfully like a girl. I wipe. Advertisement, how dare you provoke this general. Outside the tent, Brian's chief centurion began to size up the slave. The slaves in ancient Rome were also divided into 369 grades. The shackles worn by slaves in infrastructure were guarded by special personnel, and slaves with higher ranks would be better off. They had corresponding activities, and the highest-ranked slaves even had their own private property. They can move freely within the city. The one in front of him is the highest-level slave. May I have your name? Asked Polo, looking up. My lord, my name is Nuz, and I am a slave who has just obtained civilian status. Nurse replied carefully that he was a rice man who became a slave a few years ago and was later sold into the Scipio family. Since Mrs. Yulia had loved him half a year ago, she pardoned him as a slave and made him a free citizen, but still loyal to the Scipio family. Mrs. Julia, Nuz must not tell anyone what happened tonight. While speaking, Polo made a gesture of wiping his neck. In fact, this kind of thing often happens among nobles. Of course, for the sake of their own face, nobles do not allow such things to spread. Don't worry, my lord. Nothing happened tonight. Nuz, also worried that he would be silenced, said hastily. Now I can tell you your story. Slowly telling her past. It turned out that she too was from a well-known family, the ogre. But the family declined, so he joined the Scipio family. But her husband was a sick man who had passed away 3 years ago. Although his husband died of illness, he has been living the life of a lady in simplicity. However, the Scipio family has gradually declined in recent years. The family invited the priest from the temple, and the priest seemed to be instructed by someone, saying that she had brought bad luck to the family. So Yulia had to return to her hometown of Barcelona from Rome. Advertisement, it's just that I didn't expect it, and I was robbed by the Blue Iberians when I came here. Throughout the Roman Republic, although the Roman Legion opened up unprecedented territory, most of the Iberian Peninsula, all of the Italian Peninsula, most of the Balkan Peninsula, and the coast of North Africa were incorporated into the territory of the Republic. But this is only a nominal occupation. The law and order in the area on the edge of the Republic is quite unstable, and robbers often rob pedestrians. Just like Octavian almost fell into the hands of the European Gaul barbarians, Caesar was directly caught by pirates. The territory of the Roman Republic was neither republic nor safe. By the way, little Brian, who are those people? Yulia ran her hands around Brian's firm chest muscles in circles. Those are blue Iberians. They are used to painting special colors on their bodies. It is difficult to find them in the dark, Brian said slowly. Perhaps the blue Iberians are really good at sneak attacks and assassinations, but their combat effectiveness is extremely limited. In front of the regular Roman army, it was simply vulnerable. In the battle just now, no one in the Roman legion was even injured. Even some time ago, when Brian raided the Gaul tribe, 3 soldiers were killed and a dozen soldiers were injured. Most of Iberia was conquered by Rome 100 years ago. The Iberians here have far less will to resist than the Gauls. It's really terrible. If Brian hadn't appeared in time, I might have died at their hands. While speaking, Yulia was about to cry. Don't worry, I will definitely send you back to Barcelona safely. Brian squeezed the softness of his chest again. If there is something cheap, it is not profitable. What's more, Brian was going back to Barcelona City. Chapter 13. Early in the morning of the second day, the team set off again. But this time, Yulia and her party were added to the team. And Brian and Yulia share a horse. Is everyone in the army as strong as you? Yulia reached out to touch Brian's chin, which was still smooth. I don't know about the other legions, but in the entire 13th Legion, Lord Brian is the strongest. Polo spoke from the side. He once fought against Brian. Although he has been a soldier for 10 years, he could not go 3 rounds in Brian's hands. Well, I am the strongest in the entire Legion. Brian hugged the stunner in front of him. A qualified Roman elite soldier, his 3-dimensional attribute is around 80. And Brian's 3-dimensional attribute is explosively close to 100. Finished the task of overthrowing Yulia this morning and got another 3 free attributes. Brian didn't even think about it and just added it to his strength. Host, Brian age, 23 position, Deputy Commander of the Roman 13th Legion. Strength, 101 Constitution, 98 Speed, 101 points, 1,100 free attribute points. 0 as long as there are 2 attributes, Brian's 3-dimensional attributes can exceed or approach 100. In addition, Brian is proficient in Roman short sword and spear skills. In a heads-up situation, basically no one can beat him. By the way, don't you regret going back to this impoverished village? Although Barcelona City is the capital of the Iberian province, but compared to the bustling city of Rome, it is still a lot worse. Brother Brian, there is no longer any place worthy of my sister's nostalgia. They said they were returning to Barcelona, but Yulia was kicked out of the family by them. Before finishing speaking, Yulia put her small mouth close to Brian's face and whispered, "Advertisement, I feel like a war is about to break out. War? It's the summer of 91 BC, and soon the largest Confederate war in history will break out. As a time traveler, Brian is very clear about this. So before that, he insisted on joining the Legion, and he didn't hesitate to spend all his previous savings to get the position of deputy head of the Legion. I didn't expect the lady to have such awareness." Brian was instantly interested. "Oh, tell me what you think. Approximately how many people have citizenship in Rome right now?" Yulia, on the other hand, had a pair of big eyes, unable to see. About 400,000. Although the Roman Republic ruled most of the Mediterranean coast, during this period, the population ruled by the Roman Republic was approaching 10 million. But there are only hundreds of thousands of Roman citizens. It's okay to say in other areas, such as Iberia, where people don't have citizenship rights, but in the entire Italian peninsula, most people are just Roman civilians. Julia said slowly. "Keep talking." Brian nodded. Now there are many civilians in Rome from Italy, and they are seeking citizenship. Brian understood that it was impossible for the already decayed Roman Senate to grant citizenship to these Italian commoners. The corrupt and incompetent Senate has never paid enough military expenses for the Legion, and those Italian civilians who want citizenship are simply dreaming. You mean there's going to be war? I'm just saying that it is very possible that even if there is no war, the city of Rome will not become safe. So, instead of staying in Rome, it's better to go back to my hometown Barcelona. While speaking, Yulia kissed Brian lightly. You know quite a lot. The current situation is turbulent, and a war may indeed break out. But well, this is not something you, a woman, can manage. As he spoke, Brian began to rub the lump of softness. Likewise for this war, it's not something Brian can stop. Moreover, he also wanted to take advantage of this war to rise to power. Whether it was entering the Senate or commanding the entire Legion, military merit was required. Advertisement: it is impossible to conquer Gaul in a short time right now. and we can only focus on preparing for the Allied war. Okay. Julia leaned against Brian's broad chest very submissively. Arrive in the evening after a day of marching. The group finally arrived outside the city of Barcelona, but a group of soldiers blocked Brian. Although Brian's team only has 100 people, it is a solid Roman elite infantry. The security forces in Barcelona had to pay attention to it and also send a brigade of troops, but they couldn't stop it. More importantly, Roman law stipulated that legions could not enter the city without an order. Not long after, Polo brought a sheriff's officer before Brian. Lord Brian, according to Roman law, your legion cannot enter the city, the security officer said firmly. Snapped before he could finish speaking, Brian slapped him across the face. Open your eyes and see. Am I a legion? A full Roman legion, 5,000, 6,000 people. And Brian has only one soldier lined up, 100 people. The sheriff was instantly baffled by Brian. Roman law stipulated that without a clear dispatch order, the Roman legion could not enter the city. But it wasn't in Brian's hands. The Roman legion was still a line of soldiers. The general went to the city today to buy some things. So he brought about 100 people here, and let me go in if he is sensible. Otherwise, you will be crucified as a crime of disrupting military affairs. Brian couldn't help but put on a big hat. While Polo waved aside, 2 Roman soldiers appeared behind the magistrate, literally pulling him aside to crucify him. Master General, I think this is a misunderstanding. The law stipulates that the legion cannot enter the city, but it does not prohibit the general from purchasing in the city. I will order the troops to get out of the way and let the general enter the city. Brian nodded. That's about it. Chapter 14. Little man Carl, this is for the general to let go. The sheriff bowed his head, but there was a sly look in his eyes. Originally, as the city sheriff, he was very tough, but he didn't expect Brian to be even tougher than him. Wait until he returns to his own army. Instead of getting out of the way, he ordered the soldiers to line up and block Brian's way. Do you know who I am? I am Bashar of the Kaido family. If you dare to beat me, you will never want to enter the city, Sheriff Bashar said arrogantly when he returned to the army formation. He has a brigade in his hand, nearly 300 people. Since it is a security force, it is said that it is a small establishment, with only 300 people in a brigade. Brian looked at Bashar coldly, as if looking at a dead person. I slapped him before and gave him a chance. I didn't expect that he didn't cherish it. Polo, he's blocking our way. Do you know what to do? Polo pushed the whistle in his hand. Hooray! Raise your shield. Charge. Soon hundreds of gunmen lined up and rushed towards the security forces, and Brian was riding alone on the horse, holding the beauty in his arms. Yulia turned pale with shock. Sure enough, just like the rumors, Brian, known as the villain in Rome, can do absolutely anything. The security forces have the largest number. They usually bully the common people and slaves, but how can they confront the regular army head-to-head? When the spearmen lined up to charge, many security forces had already started to flee. The soldiers of the security forces are at best a free citizen. They have heard of the prestige of the Roman regular army. Those killing machines will tear everything in their path to shreds. Hold me. Bashar swung the dagger in his hand. At this moment, he regretted it a lot. Just now, when Brian gave him the steps, he honestly got out of the way and let Brian enter the city. But I have to fight for face. Thought that 300 vigilantes could stop Brian. Advertisement soon. The defense line of the security forces was torn open. How can these thin security forces block the formation of elite spearmen? The battle turned out to be one-sided. However, the Roman soldiers didn't kill them, they just knocked the opponent down to the ground, making him lose his combat effectiveness and then let the opponent go. Fights are a common occurrence in the military. Whether it is a military general or a high-level senate, they will turn a blind eye. But as long as there are dead people, then the problem will be big. Therefore, Roman soldiers have practiced their unique skills for a long time. That is, on the premise that the opponent is not dead, completely beat the opponent to the point of pain and faint. Soon, more than 100 security forces were completely beaten to the ground by Roman soldiers. This scene made Yulia dumbfounded. After all, if you kill all the security forces, the Roman Senate couldn't explain it. But if there is a fight, then there is something to talk about. Soon the arrogant Bashar just now was brought before Brian. Boy, you are crazy. Brian jumped off his horse and gently lifted Bashar's chin with his fingers. Please, Lord General, spare my life. Only now did Bashar know what role Brian was. This guy didn't play his cards according to the routine at all, and the security forces of more than 300 people fought as they said. Crucify him. Brian snorted coldly. "General, you can't treat me like this. I am a noble from the Kaido family." But Brian's soldiers didn't care about this. They directly looked at the surrounding trees and used local materials, and soon a simple cross appeared. Immediately afterwards, there was a terrifying scream. The most terrifying punishment in Rome was the cross. The human palm and tibia were nailed to the cross with long nails, because it completely avoided the vital point. Advertisement prisoners often die in despair and pain. This process is often extremely long, taking 3 to 7 days, and some people can even persist for more than 10 days. Bashar was crucified. "Put him up at the gate of the city, and see who dares to block my way in the future. It's adults." Bashar, who was nailed to the cross, kept screaming. "If I knew it, I should have kept his mouth shut." "Okay, go to town." With a wave of his hand, Brian headed towards the city of Barcelona. At this moment, the defenders in the city were stunned for a long time. Their leader, Bashar, the sheriff, was actually nailed to a cross in front of them, and their colleagues were nearly 300 people. Half of them were knocked to the ground. No one dares to stop Brian and his party now. Brian fully interpreted the meaning contained in the term soldiers. Soon Brian and his party entered the city of Barcelona. "Dear brother Brian, here I have to part ways with you." Julia lightly kissed Brian on the cheek. "Oh, where are you going?" Julia didn't answer Brian directly. "The Bashar you crucified just now is from the Kaido family. They are very powerful in the city of Barcelona. You have to be careful. If you encounter difficulties, you can come to Ogre's house to find me." "I'm definitely going to find you, but I'm not afraid of the Kaido family," Brian said very nonchalantly. This is not the first time he has nailed people to the cross. Even if the opponent is a nobleman, there is nothing to be afraid of. In short, you have to be careful. This is not your legion. Julia hinted that the number of troops around Brian was too small. "Don't worry." While speaking, Brian did not forget to touch Julia's A****. "Hey." Chapter 15. Master Brian. The other party has gone away. After Julia left, Brian kept thinking about what it was like to be with her, until the Centurion Polo reminded him. "Okay, now that you have entered the city, my dear Centurion Polo, what do you think?" "Of course I went to Xiaoyao Cave." As the deputy commander of the army, Brian never lacks a woman by his side. But Polo is different. Don't dare to blatantly bring women into the army. This is the privilege of military generals. Only generals like Brian dare to blatantly bring women into the army. So Polo has endured it for a long time, almost forgetting the smell of a woman. "What about your opinion?" Brian turned to look at the soldiers behind him. At first, everyone was hesitant, but one of the soldiers directly raised his fist and shouted. The other soldiers followed suit. "Go to Xiaoyao Cave. Go and have fun." It seems that the long military life has driven these people crazy, and as long as 3 or 5 silver coins, you can sleep with a good woman. During this time, this group of soldiers made a fortune following Brian. The so-called men have money in their pockets and learn to be bad. "Okay, everyone be quiet. Today the general will take you to whoring." As a scum who had been in Rome for many years, Brian soon found the biggest brothel in Barcelona. "Sir, we didn't break the law." The brothel owner saw that so many Roman soldiers turned green. This is a true Roman elite soldier who killed people on the battlefield. Everyone has an invisible murderous aura, especially the murderous look on Brian's body. It was almost breathless. God knows how many people he killed before. "Who said you broke the law? We're here to spend the night." Brian tossed the whorehouse owner aside and sat in his place. "Advertisement, sir. We are a legitimate business here. We have always obeyed the law and paid taxes on time. Your army cannot be stationed here," the brothel owner said tremblingly. Since he was in this line of work, it was the first time he encountered such a murderous and dignified army. The spearmen led by Brian have more than 10 years of military history. Ordinary people simply cannot bear their chilling aura. "Did I say I was going to be stationed here?" Brian picked up the red grapes on the table and tasted them. "You are not stationed here. Don't you want to?" The owner of the brothel thumped in his heart. Is this general going to lead his soldiers to prostitutes? It's just crazy. You must know that the discipline of the Roman army was quite strict. Ordinary people really can't do this kind of thing. But who Brian was, he didn't care about that at all. "This is 30 gold coins. I'll take it here tonight and drive out all the other guests." Brian threw out a bag of money and threw it at the brothel owner. 30 gold coins. The brothel owner couldn't put it down and picked up the money back. But greedy, he suddenly remembered another thing. Ordinary guests are lucky to say that a nobleman is also coming tonight. Looking at the general in front of him wearing a red tasseled helmet, He should also be a nobleman. Then he said with a look of embarrassment, General, the young master of the Duta family is coming tonight. Didn't you understand what I said? The young master of the Duta family, go and reject it for me. If he dares to disturb the general's mood, I will break his leg. Brian stepped forward and kicked the brothel owner aside. Yes, I'm going to do it now. The brothel owner kept an eye out, and he agreed to Brian for the time being, and then informed the sheriff about it. The brothel owner was about to leave when Brian stopped him. Also, send the woman you prepared for the young master of the Duta family to my room. Yes. Advertisement. The brothel owner left in a daze. After the brothel owner left, he didn't immediately reject the young master of Duta's family. Instead, he ran to the sheriff to report. I saw soldiers lying on the ground in the hall of the sheriff. Those were soldiers who had been beaten half to death by Brian's men before, and their Sheriff Bashar is lying on the bed. 2 doctors were surrounding him, cleaning his wound. After Brian left, he was taken down from the cross by his soldiers. Since the spikes had pierced both of his tibias, the wounds were very troublesome to clean. If there is no infection later, it is possible for him to fully recover. But in ancient Rome, where antibiotics were lacking and medical care was limited, late infection was almost 100% of the time. Have you found it? The identity of that guy? Bashar said to the people around him while enduring the severe pain. Report, sir, the other party's identity has been verified. Say, the opponent is the deputy commander of the 13th Roman Legion, Brian Aurelius Cotta. Brian Aurelius Cotta is Brian's full name, and Brian's father was a veteran of the Roman Senate, who had served as the consul of the Republic many years ago. Even now the Cotta family is one of the most prominent families in the Republic. As soon as he heard about the other party's official position, Bashar wanted to die. Nobles with military power are not something he can shake. Although he has quite a few people under his command, the security army and the Roman Legion are not on the same level at all. Just 2 hours before, the 300-man vigilante had been completely crushed by the 100-man Roman Legion. Master Bashar, you can make the decision for me. The brothel owner ran in crying and crawling. Stingy Golang, why do you have time to come to my place? A military officer named Brian led a group of soldiers to occupy my brothel. Gran didn't think of Brian as a great nobleman because he wore a red tasseled helmet and thought he was just a legion tribune. Leading the legion to go whoring can completely punish him for a felony. Chapter 16. The aristocrats prostituted, and most of the aristocrats did it throughout the Roman Republic. Even some high-ranking ladies had lovers. Of course, no one will bring this kind of thing to the table. However, it is not unheard of for Brian to lead a legion to prostitute. It's just that Brian is tougher. Commander Bashar, you have to decide for me. Golang was on the verge of crying. Only then did he realize that Bashar, who was his savior, had injuries on his palms and shins. With just one glance, Grand recognized the injury, which was caused by a cross. God, who has the guts to crucify the magistrate? Commander Bashar, what's wrong with you? Who hurt you? Asked by Grand, Bashar's expression was the same. It's the Brian you mentioned, Bashar said angrily. Golang's face was the same. Brian just kicked him just now. Compared with what happened to Bashar, he was obviously much more tolerant. Who is Bashar? He is a nobleman of the Kaido family, and even the chief of security in the city of Barcelona. In any case, it was an upstart, the kind that almost no one provoked. And it was such an upstart who was nailed to the cross by Brian in his mouth. What? Golang's face turned green at the moment. He had planned to ask the sheriff to back him up, but obviously, that Brian couldn't beat Bashar at all. And if it fails, it will be nailed to the cross again. Stingy Golang, you go back first, and report to me immediately if there is any movement. Bashar said bitterly. Neither Brian's identity nor the army in his hands can be shaken by a small Bashar. So he is going to ask for help from Barcelona's city lord, Galgota. Galgota is a great nobleman here, and he has a lot of relationship with the governor of the Iberian province. The villain will leave. At this moment, Golang has realized that the following conflict is beyond his meddling as a little slave, prostitute, master. The first priority right now is to go to the Duta family to prevent the arrival of the young master. Golang was almost insane and generally fled, and Bashar said to the soldiers beside him, "Come here, take me to the city lord's mansion." Advertisement. At this moment, a young girl was brought into Brian's room. I saw that she was wearing a Middle Eastern skirt, and the small skirt perfectly outlined her figure. Especially her water snake-like crisp waist gave people a feeling of wanting to stop. In addition, Her face was hidden under a black veil, which added a bit of mystery. Brian clicked on her attributes with great interest. Name, Burnani age, 18 occupation, Hassan killer strength, 71 constitution, 79 speed, 85 ability. Close combat. These three attributes are too high for a woman, and her speed is already faster than most elite soldiers, not even inferior to the dead fighters in the arena. Killer Hassan. Isn't that a professional killer from Parthia? Parthia is the Middle East region of later generations. It is not surprising that there are many killers here. It's just that Brian met the killer just after arriving here today, which seems a little strange. Duder, go to hell. While Brian was thinking, the woman took out a short knife and stabbed at Brian, wanting to sneak up on Brian while he's off guard. Although she was very fast, Brian was even faster. One dodged to avoid the opponent's fatal blow, and at the same time grabbed her right hand holding the short blade. Whether it's three-dimensional attributes or martial arts, both of them are superior to each other. Although Brian has explosive three-dimensional attributes, Brian's martial arts are the crystallization of thousands of years of fusion in China. Ordinary people can't walk for a few rounds in their hands, and they will be easily killed by them. And this woman is no exception. Brian kicked her directly in the stomach, knocking her to the ground. He stepped forward, stepped on his right hand, and snatched the short blade from his hand. The sound of fighting soon attracted two soldiers. The two soldiers directly grabbed the woman and pressed her to the ground, and Brian picked up the dagger with great interest. Advertisement. There was a trace of green light shining on the short blade, obviously poisoned. Poisoned dagger. Brian picked up the dagger and lightly slashed across the woman's cheek, but it didn't break her skin. You called Duder before you came in. Who is he? Brian seriously suspected that he blocked the gun for someone else. The killer should have come for Duder's people. Are you not Duterte? At this time, the woman showed a look of surprise. At this moment, she finally realized that she had killed the wrong person. Duder, the young master of the Dutta family, was relatively thin. Although it looked somewhat similar to the officer in front of him, he would never possess such a domineering martial skill. Of course, this general is not Duterte. Go and capture that grand. However, at this moment, the system sent multiple choice questions again. Ding dong, please choose. 1. Kill the female killer directly and get 100 reward points. 2. Train the female killer into the most humble female slave and reward 1 attribute point. 3. Take the female killer for your own use and become a sharp blade in your hand and reward 500 points. Killers are the most difficult profession to train. They only have tasks and killing in their minds, so Brian didn't choose immediately, but said to the soldiers beside him. One of the soldiers nodded. Not long after, Grand, who had just returned, was caught in front of Brian. See the subdued woman and the short blade in Brian's hand. The fool also knows what happened. Master General, I was wronged. Gulang immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. Did I tell you that you were guilty? You begged for mercy. Forehead, this woman doesn't seem to be from your place. And the female killer's veil has already been torn off. If she put aside her killer identity, coupled with her delicate face, perfect figure, she is definitely a beauty. At this moment, Gulang was in a cold sweat. If he admits that the woman is his, then the crime of assassinating a senior military general is not a light one. He immediately denied it. Chapter 17. I don't know this woman. I've never seen her before. Assassinating a military general is a capital offense in itself, plus Brian's performance before. Gulang knew that even if he was killed, he could not admit that he knew the killer in front of him. In fact, he bought this woman from the slave market a few days ago. Because of his beautiful appearance, he was selected by the young master of the Dutta family. It's just that he didn't expect it to be a killer. Since it's not yours, then I won't hold you accountable. This woman dared to assassinate this general. She has the right to ask who is behind the scenes, and then crucify them. Upon hearing the cross, Gulang's heart directly rose to his throat. The man in front of him really did what he said. Just a few hours ago, he had just nailed the magistrate to the cross. The general is wronged. I have absolutely nothing to do with this killer. Gulang immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. Well, I believe what you said, but the killer just now frightened the general. As the owner of this place, should you express it? When Gulang came in just now, he found that the female killer had been pinned to the ground. I didn't see that it was Brian who subdued the female killer. If he saw it, he would definitely complain in his heart. Since this daring killer frightened the general, I decided to waive the expenses of the general and others here. Grand was very reluctant, and took out the 30 gold coins that Brian gave him before. Not enough. Add another 50 gold coins. Brian calmly took back the gold coins that belonged to him, and then said slowly, "Afterwards, I will interrogate this female killer. If she says something that is not good for you." Having said that, Brian stopped abruptly. Gulang's face changed drastically in an instant. He was just an ordinary brothel owner who had spent a lot of money to buy a citizenship a few years ago. Advertisement became a true Roman citizen. But even if he became a Roman citizen, he was nothing in front of these real nobles, especially those who used military power like Brian. "I've always been a good citizen who obeyed the law." Although reluctant, Grand still took out 50 gold coins. "Well, from your appearance, you should be a law-abiding citizen. I think even if there are any unfavorable remarks, it should be framed." Brian took the 50 gold coins with peace of mind. The corners of the mouths of the two soldiers next to him were slightly raised. Almost unable to hold back, one of them almost laughed, but Brian gave him a glare. The female killer who was caught looked at Brian dumbfounded. Clearly, he killed the wrong man. Her melee combat ability is good, but in a one-on-one situation, Brian's melee combat ability is almost invincible. "Okay, go down. I want to interrogate this female killer." Hearing Brian's words, Grand Rumming received amnesty. God knows how much money will be extorted if he continues to stay. Brian turned to look at the perfect figure of the killer. It would be a waste to just kill her like this. Brian thought about it and chose 3. Even if it can't be trained into a sharp blade in his hands, the female killer has a special flavor. At least he can enjoy it. Brian took out the riding crop around his waist. The female killer actually raised her head in a very ostentatious way. It was obvious that they were strictly trained killers, and ordinary flesh and blood injuries could not break through their defenses at all. "Make a simple cross and tie her up. I will interrogate her slowly." Soon a simple cross was erected in Brian's room. Of course, Brian just wanted to tie the other party up and didn't intend to crucify her. Soon the female killer was tied to a simple cross, and a special wooden stick was stuffed into her mouth to prevent her from committing suicide. Advertisement. I heard that the Hassan killers produced in Parthia are all strictly trained. The female killer looked at Brian in shock again. Unexpectedly, Brian could tell the source of his career. Who was this general in front of him? She had indeed been trained as a killer in Parthia. Brian kept turning his whip. "I want to know your secret. If you can tell me, I will make the rest of your life easier." And the female killer still raised her cheeks high, with an unyielding look. And at this moment a soldier stepped forward. "General, please hand her over to me. Make sure that she will speak within 20 minutes. And Brian waved his hand, rejecting the soldier's proposal. Ordinary interrogation methods are of little use to these Hassan killers. These Hassan killers, after 2000, their successors are terrorists who shocked the whole world. These desperados who regard death as home have long dedicated their lives to their gods. At the same time, the female killer raised her cheeks high again as if to show off. "Since you are not afraid of death, let's make a game." According to legend, in the Far East, on the other side of the world, there is a cruel punishment. This kind of punishment is to chop off a person's limbs, and then pull out all his teeth, and make this person into a special vessel called a human bowl, which is specially used to contain filth. While speaking, Brian drew the dagger from his waist. "It came from the Far East. It's a pity that I haven't seen the real thing, and you are so beautiful. We can try it." Not only was the female killer, but even the two soldiers beside her were sweating profusely. This cruel punishment is simply too evil, and only the leader of the Legion could have thought of it. And the female killer kept struggling after hearing the words. "Remember, I only give you one chance. If you dare to lie to me, I will make your life worse than death." Chapter 18. The female killer looked at Brian with a look of fear. As a killer, she could only feel the murderous aura in Brian at this moment. This is definitely not something that ordinary nobles can have. Bernani secretly regretted not recognizing Brian. But at this moment, he only nodded in resignation. Just when Brian was about to remove the stick from his mouth, there was a loud noise outside, and Grand's almost pleading voice. "Master Duder, I beg you, don't hurry home. Did you agree to prepare an oriental prostitute for me? I think you don't want to continue working here." Gulang, who is stingy. "Eldest young master, I will prepare other prostitutes for you later. I just ask you to leave here quickly today." Brian turned to the two soldiers beside him. "Watch her. Don't let her commit suicide." Then Brian strode out of the room. When Brian left the room, he saw Grand was punched down by a young man in his early 20s. There are more than 10 strong men behind the young man, who should be the so-called noble young master Duterte. At the same time, many soldiers came out of the room and stood behind Brian. There were as many as 20 of them. Duder saw Brian and said harshly, "You are the officer who bought the whole brothel." And Brian threw aside the dagger at his waist. Of course, in ancient Rome, this was not a symbol of peace, and it means exactly the opposite. A common occurrence among nobles. When two nobles met and were about to fight, the side with the weapon would voluntarily give up the weapon, indicating a fair duel. That's right. If you interrupt my good business today, if you don't pay the price, you won't be able to leave here safely. Advertisement. Brian started turning his wrists and snapping. In the entire Legion, Brian's unarmed combat ability, he claims to be second, and no one dares to be the first. I heard that you caught a killer who was going to assassinate me. Please hand her over to me. I won't pursue today's matter. Facing Brian, Duder said arrogantly. Brian was dressed in civilian clothes, not his muscular plate armor that showed his status. Duder thinks that Brian is just an ordinary small officer, but a Legion tribune. Although the tribunes of the Legion are also nobles, most of them are knights, and Duder will not take them seriously. I did catch a killer from Parthia, but when the other party heard the word Parthia, they immediately turned pale with shock. Parthia? Hurry up and give her to me. I can forget about the past. Boom. Before Duder could finish his sentence, he was kicked out by Brian. You really know how to push your nose to your face. You don't blame the past? You disturbed my good business, and I haven't settled this account for you yet. With a wave of Brian's hand, the soldiers beside him couldn't rush up. The dozen or so giants that Duder brought with him seemed to be big and round, but in fact they had already been pampered, and their real combat power was extremely limited. They were knocked to the ground by soldiers after almost a face-to-face encounter, and Brian walked up to Duder. The foot just now was quite heavy, and now he slowly got up. How dare you hit me, you lowly pariah? Untouchable? I hit you lightly? Brian took a step forward and kicked him down again with a whip kick. Although both of them are of the thinner figure, their appearance is somewhat similar. One is a pampered noble son, one is a high-level military general with a force value of max. Advertisement. Master General, please be merciful. He is the young master of the Kaido family. At this moment Gu Lang wanted to die. Brian shot so hard. He clearly wanted to kill him. If the young master of the Duta family died here, he, as the master of this place, would not be able to escape. I don't care what Duta family he is. Come and tie me up. Yes, sir. And if you talk too much, I'll break your hamstring and throw it out. Soon, the soldiers tied up Duder and all the strong men he brought. But Brian went back to the room and continued to interrogate the female killer. Come to your killer again. I told me a guy named Duder, a Parthian female killer, was going to kill him, and he was quite excited. I think there should be some stories between you. At this moment, the female killer was tied to a cross, with a wooden stick stuffed into her mouth, and she looked at the young man in front of her in fear. He is strong and wise, like a devil from hell. He can see through a person's heart. If your story is interesting, I will make your life more comfortable in the future. If there is no use value, I will make your life worse than death. When Brian turned his head, the soldier next to him took out the wooden stick from the woman's mouth. My name is Bernani, and I used to be the daughter of a nobleman. However, our family was persecuted by the Dutta family. So I vowed to go to Parthia to learn the art of assassination, and I must kill Duder with my own hands. The persecution of nobles against each other was a common occurrence in Rome, whether it was the Republic or the Empire. Where there are interests, there will be disputes, and where there are disputes, there will inevitably be persecution. Oh, so your family used to be a prominent nobleman. Brian looked at the female killer with great interest. She really didn't look like a child from an ordinary civilian family. It's not a big nobleman. Our family has a secret. As long as you help me kill Duder, I will tell you the secret. Snapped. Brian slapped the female killer across the face with a horsewhip. Recognize your current situation. You are not qualified to negotiate terms with me. Chapter 19. Brian slaps your killer jaw. You are not a staunch Zoroastrian. You are afraid of death, and you cannot take revenge before you are afraid of dying. Hear the word revenge. Banani's body trembled immediately. As a devout Zoroastrian, there should be no weakness in his heart. However, Bernani's heart is full of vengeance and driven by the heart of vengeance. She can do anything. However, she must not die before taking revenge. This is her weakness. Feeling the other person's trembling body, Brian knew he was right. This female killer is definitely not as strong as she appears on the surface. Say, what secret do you have? In Bernani's eyes, Brian was like a demon returning from hell, and his words were irresistible. Our family used to be a nobleman of Carthage hundreds of years ago. After Hannibal conquered Iberia, he looted a lot of property. Hannibal was hailed as one of the 4 famous generals in the West by later generations. In 218 BC, he led the army across the Pyrenees and the Alps, led the army into Italy, and severely damaged the Roman Republic. After crossing the 2 mountains, the 100,000 troops he led were left with little left. So Hannibal hid part of the supplies and belongings, and left someone to take care of them. And after 100 years, these people have become minor nobles in Rome. It was the noble family that Bernani belonged to. Originally, this was a family secret, and should have been sealed in the long river of history. But a few years ago, the secret suddenly leaked out. The Dutta family grasped the news, and then persecuted the Bernani family, hoping to get Hannibal's treasure. In front of all 4, only Bernani fled here, traveled across the ocean to Parthia, where she joined the Zoroastrian cult and learned the art of assassination. Coming back now, I just want to kill the Deuter family and avenge her family. But for some unknown reason, Deuter seems to have grasped this information, but he has never found Bernani. So when Deuter heard that a killer from Parthia wanted to kill him, he immediately became excited. Advertisement, because as the last descendant of that family, Bernani is the only one who holds the secret of the location of the treasure. Hannibal's treasure. Brian rubbed his still-clean chin and thought. As a generation of famous generals, Hannibal almost conquered the entire Iberian Peninsula. A lot of wealth must have been plundered from the barbarians. At that time, most of the legion died in 2 mountains. There must be some materials and belongings hidden by it. After hundreds of years of corrosion, his supplies may be unusable, but gold cannot be deteriorated. Brian was sure the property she was talking about must be gold, because the entire Iberian Peninsula is pushed forward 130 years. Here, like the Gaul region in the north, is where barbarian tribes live. The simplest and most immediate possessions of these tribes were turned into gold. Ding dong. Please choose. 1. Kill Bernani, as if nothing happened. Reward 100 points. 2. Hand over Bernani to Deuter to ease the relationship with the Dutta family, and reward 200 points. 3. Control Bernani, get the treasure map, swallow the treasure all by yourself, and reward 5 attribute points. Brian couldn't help frowning. 5 attribute points. This is a reward that has never been seen before, and the highest reward before is only 3 attribute points. It can be seen that the task of this choice is very difficult. The first thing to do is to pry the treasure out of Bernani's mouth, but also to deal with the revenge of the Dutta family, even if everything is safe. If you want to get Hannibal's treasure safely, you must mobilize the legion. Hannibal's treasure was really alluring to Brian. Brian is rich and poor at the same time. Brian's personal wealth exceeds 100,000 gold coins. The purchasing power of 1 gold coin is equivalent to 5,000 renminbi. 100,000 gold coins are equivalent to 500 million yuan in later generations. Right now, Brian is literally a billionaire. However, Brian has an army to support, costing close to 100,000 gold coins a year. Advertisement. Although there is Cadius, the official army leader, Brian only pays half, but in terms of wealth, Brian has always been stretched. Thinking of this, Brian chose 3 without much hesitation. Prepare to claim Hannibal's treasure for himself. Go and call Polo, Brian said to a soldier beside him. After a while, Polo ran over with his trousers up and shirtless. He hasn't been there since the beginning. Even when Brian was assassinated and beat Deutert, he never appeared. It can be seen that the work tonight is quite serious. The first thing Poirot saw when he came in was a young girl tied to a cross. Exine said, Lord Brian really knows how to play. As the head of the Legion, he is different from others. Even if he wants to go whoring, he has to tie up the other party before playing. Polo just gave a thumbs up to praise Brian for being flirtatious. But the latter said coldly, Polo, this person is entrusted to you. Be careful with her, don't let her run away, let alone commit suicide, and don't touch her. But, Master Brian, didn't you give all the rewards to the brothers after you finished playing? Brian turned back and grabbed Polo by the neck. See clearly, this is the killer of Zoroastrian cult. Be careful when guarding her. Don't be killed by her. Yes, Lord Brian. Then Brian left the room and met the boss here, the stingy Grand. At this moment, Gulang's face has turned into a sauce purple, and now the matter has become a big mess. Whether it is Brian or the Kaido family, he can't afford to mess with it. Master General, please show mercy and release Master Deuter. Release? Why did you let him disturb the General's good deeds? and let his family come to pay the ransom. How many? 5,000 gold coins. Chapter 20. But, my Lord General, you are an officer of Rome, so this violates the laws of Rome? The open kidnapping of nobles for blackmail was prohibited by Roman law. Brian did not only violate Roman law, but also trampled on military regulations. Brush. Almost instantly, Brian drew the dagger from his waist. The Roman short sword has a wide and short blade, and the killing position is all at the tip of the sword. At this moment, the tip of the sword was on Gulang's chin. As a nobleman, Deuter offended me. The two of us had the most sacred duel. He lost to me. I didn't take his life, so I need his family to redeem his life. Holy duel? When was the holy duel ever fought? But it was Brian's unilateral crushing. But there has never been a holy duel. When conflicts arise between nobles, the holiest duels can be fought. The victor can kill the defeated. Of course, the defeated can also redeem his life with money. As soon as Gulang finished speaking, he felt bad. Sure enough, he flew upside down and hit the wall heavily. You just need to convey my words to his family. Brian stepped forward and stepped on Gran's cheek and said impatiently, Yes, General, I'm going right away. Gran got up and left like crazy. He didn't want to stay with Brian anymore, even for a minute. Duterte and his men are bound in cages reserved for brothels. Ironically, these cages are for unruly whores. General Brian, please let me go. I know I was wrong. When Duterte was locked in, he naturally knew Brian's identity. In the city of Rome, Brian killed people, robbed goods, and did almost all kinds of crimes in lending usury. He has many titles such as the scum of the city of Rome, the villain of the underground guild, gangster, and so on. However, he didn't expect that he would get into the position of deputy head of the Legion. Before that, I want to ask you a few questions first. Advertisement. Brian took out the key to the cage and kept tapping on the brass lock. Excuse me. Deuter wanted to know that you are a tyrannical person. At worst, I admit that I am cowardly. Anyway, everyone is a nobleman, so you can still kill me. How much do you know about Bernani Baka? Hearing the name Bernani Baka, Duterte felt a little bit in his heart. Brian is a senior general of the Legion with military authority. After Marius reformed, the senior generals of the Legion had an inexplicable attachment to wealth. Whether it's Brian, the deputy head of the Legion, or Cadius, the head of the Legion, the same is true of the other Legion commanders. As long as it is profitable, almost anything can be done. The Legion is like a bottomless pit, devouring the wealth of the military's top generals. Now Brian mentions Bernanel Baka, obviously noticing Hannibal's treasure. I do not know. Duterte quickly shook his head in denial. But from his expression, the fool also knew that he was lying. Oh, you don't know? Otherwise, insert the only key of this copper lock into the lock. Duterte's eyes widened, thinking Brian was going to let him out. Snapped. Brian tried hard, and the only key broke in the lock. Sorry, the key is broken. Brian smiled and turned to leave. While Duterte was still in a daze, Brian turned around and looked back. I heard that there will be a fire here tonight, Mr. Deuter. Don't be burned to death by then, hiss. Not only Duterte, but even the strong men beside him also took a deep breath. This is no longer a threat, it can be regarded as a death declaration. Advertisement. It is clear that if you do not cooperate, you will be set on fire tonight. Although Brian imprisoned Deuter, he did not kill him. After Deuter was burned to death on the second day, Brian just didn't admit that he did it. Moreover, he is a military general, local officials and nobles, there is nothing to do with him. At most, it's just going to the Roman Senate, and it's just another round of wrangling. Brian is already familiar with getting rid of responsibility after setting a fire. Especially in Rome, Brian also has a helper, Crassus. That is, Brian sent people to set the fire, while Crassus sent people to put out the fire while earning huge profits. Master Brian, please wait. He knows Duterte. Compared to being ruthless, he can't compare to Brian. Moreover, it is not known whether there is Hannibal's treasure, and now his life is at stake. Oh, my dear Master Duterte, do you remember something? Yes, Lord Brian. I remember. That's really thanks to God Jupiter for reminding our wise Master Duterte of the past. For the next 5 minutes, Deuter explained to Brian how they ruined the Benani family. Of course, Brian was not interested in the process. That means you didn't find the treasure map? Yes, Lord Brian. The treasure map should be on Bernani's body. Brian nodded. Since the Kaido family didn't know the treasure map, it would be much easier to deal with the female killer next. It seems that the great Vulcan Hephaestus is going to bed early tonight. Master Deuter, you should go to bed early too. Brian turned to leave. Brian, I already told you. Let me go. Brian, who was about to leave, turned his head and smiled jokingly. When the ransom arrives, I will let you go. Brian, you liar. I curse you. The Furies will come to you. My God is different from your God. Haha. Chapter 21. You immediately take my letter, return to the Legion station, and hand it to Mr. Cadius in person, and tell me that I have a big business here, and he understands. Let Rex lead no less than 3 brigades of soldiers. Brian handed the already written papyrus letter to his cronies beside him. The conflict between Brian and the nobles in Barcelona became more and more serious, and he had to guard against it. Although Brian's soldiers are all veterans, there is only one spearman lined up with 100 people. In the fierce battle, it is possible to be exhausted, and his confidant made a Roman military salute and left quickly. Polo. Brian hadn't seen Polo a few times since coming to this brothel, and now he shouted loudly. After about 5 minutes, Polo came to Brian disheveled. Polo, immediately notify everyone to gather. Yes, Master Brian. Bringing these soldiers is not just for fun. Now that the woman is asleep too, it's time to do some serious business. The main purpose of coming to Barcelona this time is to buy some slaves, especially some slaves with mining knowledge. What's more important is some professional equipment. If there are not enough slaves, you can also order legionnaires to serve as them. In the next gold rush, professional equipment is needed to dig out the ore. Even with the simplest waterbed method, large equipment is required to transport the water to the appropriate location. Of course, this is just the previous plan. If there is no Hannibal's treasure, Brian will just beat Duterte up and go buy slaves today. Soon, under the supervision of Polo, those Roman soldiers who were unwilling to get out of bed were passed out of the room. All the members of the spearman lineup, reserve soldiers, have assembled. Report to Lord Brian. The 3rd formation of the Lancers has assembled. Polo said loudly. Very good. You bastards, you had a good time last night, didn't you? Advertisement it, sir. Had a great time. At this moment, a familiar voice came. Brian looked back. It was the noble Lady Yulia who separated from him yesterday. It's you. My Lord General, you don't recognize me after we've only been separated for a day. Yulia pretended to be very sad. No way. I will never forget my wife's kindness. Brian stepped forward and hugged Yulia. Yulia is mature, dignified, and charming, giving people an irresistible feeling. He also said that he would never forget him. So you came to whoring after just a day. Yulia stretched out her index finger and tapped Brian's cheek. Ahem. In fact, I am here to catch the killer who assassinated the noble. Brian said in embarrassment, but his hand touched the other's waist very sincerely. Start talking nonsense again. The news that you led a line of soldiers to prostitute has spread throughout the city of Barcelona. Brian didn't care one iota about it. As far as he is concerned, he has no good reputation. I have done such absurd things like this many times in the city of Rome, and it is not bad. If you want a W***** go whoring, why did you kidnap Master Duder of the Duta family? Now they have brought the matter to the city lord. Not to be outdone, Yulia squeezed Brian's chest. However, now that Brian is wearing a muscular plate armor, he doesn't know if he can feel it. The city lord's mansion? Didn't you nail Bashar to the cross yesterday? Now they are also running to the city lord's mansion, asking the city lord to give an explanation. Yulia turned around gracefully and broke free from Brian's shackles. These cowardly fellows know how to find the city lord. Advertisement. Brian snorted softly. To be honest, he didn't take this city lord seriously at all. If it was the governor of Iberia, maybe it would be okay. But the opponent is just a nobleman. Although he has some real power, he has no military power. The vigilante in his hand, in Brian's opinion, is no different from paper. Moreover, although the city of Barcelona is a big city in name, there are no more than 600 security forces in the entire city. Coupled with their weak combat effectiveness, they are not enough to look at in front of the regular army. Now the 100 elite soldiers in Brian's hands are quite important. By the way, honey, why did you think of looking for me? Brian stepped forward without hesitation and hugged Yulia. I wouldn't have let me, a widow, come forward, but none of the nobles in Barcelona knew you. And someone saw me riding a horse with you yesterday. My father, Darius, made good friends with the city lord Calgotha. So, dear, are you representing yourself? Or are you representing the city lord? This time Brian was bolder, reaching out to the other's chest and rubbing wantonly. Then let's talk about business first. The lord of the city wants you to release Deuter and make some compensation to Bashar, so that big things can be turned into small things, and small things can be turned into nothing. Now in the entire Roman Republic, the current situation seems to be stable, but in fact there is an undercurrent. War could break out at any time. Therefore, some big nobles or local forces are unwilling to provoke the military, especially an overbearing and unreasonable military senior like Brian. Hearing Yulia's words, Polo's cheeks twitched. No one knew Brian better than him, and it was impossible for him to pay compensation. Since it's official business, let's talk about official business. Duterte offended me. I will never let him go easily. As for Bashar, he didn't die on the cross. He is lucky and wants compensation. Not a single Seth. Yulia shook her head with a wry smile. She has always been a good judge of people. Brian was definitely not the type to compromise easily. Then let's talk about personal matters. Chapter 22. Oh, what's the matter? Brian was curious about the private matter that the other party said. Great Deputy Commander of the 13th Legion, I know your past very well, and of course your body. Yulia nakedly didn't shy away from the eyes of the soldiers around her, and even started touching Brian's chest again. If you miss my body, I'll catch up with you when I come tonight. Now, I have some things to do. You are so reckless, but I like it. If Yulia is a mistress, she is absolutely 100% qualified. Brian also likes this kind of coquettish woman, but now he has something to do. Come, don't go. Seeing that Brian was about to leave, Yulia quickly grabbed his wrist. Okay, woman, although I'm obsessed with my body, you'd better speak quickly. Brian's tolerance for the woman in front of him was beyond normal. If it was someone else, he would have already punched her. On behalf of my father, Darius, I would like to further cooperate with the general. Hearing Brian's semi-threatening words, Yulia began to speak seriously. The Augurs were an ancient family in ancient Rome. Decades ago, Darius' father, Quintus, also Julia's grandfather, once served as the consul of the Roman Republic. But after Quintus, the entire Ogre family gradually declined and gradually faded out of the circle of Roman power. Now he is just an ordinary nobleman in Barcelona. Although the family has declined, the vision of the leaders of the family is still very unique. The entire Roman Republic is now quite corrupt, and the Senate holds power. Especially the Confederate Italians have not been granted citizenship for hundreds of years. Those nobles who held military power had to pay for the army out of their own pockets. It will be a matter of time before you have self-respect. The reform of Marius indirectly led the Roman Republic to the monarchy. Now the Roman Senate is extremely corrupt, and the surrounding Italians have never received their due rights. Advertisement, it is a matter of time before war breaks out. So the Ogle family wanted to hold the thigh in advance, and Brian was that thick and horizontal thigh. Yulia's vision is very vicious, and now Brian is only the deputy commander of the army, but he is very ambitious. Once the war broke out, Brian would definitely be the general of one side, commanding one or more legions. Oh, want to cooperate with me? Brian couldn't help but look up at the woman in front of him again. Knowing that she came here, she wanted to get closer to Brian. Yes, you came to Barcelona without a purpose, right? Maybe our family can help you here. And the reward is very simple for you, just a little bit of kindness. Yulia smiled at Brian. Just a little kindness in return, Brian's kindness, the 13th Legion's kindness. Ding dong, please choose. 1. Accept Yulia's proposal to cooperate with the Ogre family and reward 200 points. 2. Reject Yulia's proposal and reward 200 points. 3. Kill Yulia. Reward 500 points. Seeing option 3, Brian gasped. Is there really no option in this system? Even this kind of choice is given. As the saying goes, reach out and don't hit a smiling face. Originally, Yulia came here to show her love and even had a one-night stand with Brian. Without even thinking about it, I directly denied 3 and chose item 1. I need some mining equipment and slaves now. If your family can get them for me, it will naturally win the goodwill of the 13th Legion. Julia asked suspiciously. Mining equipment? Slaves? Have you discovered a huge mineral? Brian nodded. Advertisement, he discovered gold deposits in the Red River Valley of Castilla. As a traveler, Brian naturally knew that the Castilla gold mine was the largest gold mine in the Roman Empire. As long as you master it completely, you don't have to worry about the financial problems of the Legion anymore. What mine is it? Gold mine. It's rich in reserves. Can you get the equipment and slaves I need? Of course, I will pay you gold coins at the market price. Although Brian is known as the scum of Rome, the villain of the Underground Guild, But Brian's reputation is quite good, and he has never treated his allies and subordinates badly. This is why many Roman soldiers followed him desperately. Well, roughly how many slaves do you need? Mining equipment is easy to say. Even if it is made now, there is some problem, but there are some problems with slaves. Now it is a time of peace. The number of slaves is relatively rare, and the price is expensive. I probably need 1,000, 2,000 slaves. Before the Legion captured slaves and sold them, each slave could be sold for 4 gold coins. But now in the hands of slave merchants, each one can be sold for at least 5 to 6 gold coins. The budget Brian can accept is around 10,000 gold coins. After all, the wealth in his hands has to support the entire 13th Legion. So much. Yulia was a little surprised. To buy so many slaves. Of course, she would not be so surprised if she knew that Castile would become the largest gold mine in Rome. It doesn't have to be so many, the more the better. The upper limit of the number of people should not exceed 2,000. Of course, the 2,000 people are only temporary, and when Brian takes care of the Targo tribe, the slaves will naturally not be a problem. Okay, I'll go home and tell my father to do it as soon as possible, but Brian, you'd better not provoke the nobles in Barcelona. It's best to let Deuter go. But Brian didn't care, and touched Yulia's ****. His army can reach outside Barcelona in just 3 days. Chapter 23. As soon as Brian's army arrives, they can openly search for Hannibal's treasure. Before that, it was a dream to ask Brian to hand over Duterte. Polo, bring the female killer and the noble young master. Let's change places. We can't stay here any longer. Yes, Lord Brian. On the other hand, the brothel owner, the stingy Golongru, was pardoned. Brian left, which means that he can operate normally. Master Brian, where are the followers around Duterte? Just as Polo was about to leave, he remembered that a dozen or so followers of young Master Deuter were still imprisoned below. Those civilians are worthless. Let them go. Yes. The military literacy of Roman legionnaires is very high. Soon the army was assembled and ready to leave the brothel. It's not that the place is bad. It's just that soldiers can't accompany prostitutes every day, and there are still many things to do. So Brian has to order the army to move out. And the female killer and Deuter were put into 2 cages. The female killer was tightly bound throughout the entire process. Even in the cage, she was tied to a cross. When Deuter found the female killer, he felt bad. It looks like Hannibal's treasure is about to fall into the hands of that demon. Of course, at this moment, he is more worried about his life safety. He was originally a nobleman, and no one dared to touch him in Barcelona. But Brian is not an ordinary nobleman, not only a great nobleman, but also a nobleman with military power. Soon, Brian rented a huge courtyard for the right price. The whole regiment, only 1 rank, moved in. After settling down, the first thing is to interrogate. The female killer was now taken directly to the underground cell. This courtyard has an underground cell, which is why Brian took a fancy to this place. The previous owner was a big slave owner who often trained those disobedient slaves in the basement. Brian motioned to untie the rope from the woman's body. Advertisement: the woman has been trapped for a whole day since she was captured by Brian. Bernani, right? This is lunch for you. Brian prepared a decent lunch for him. There are white bread, clear water, and barbecue, as well as some Mediterranean specialty fruits. The female killer looked at Brian warily, and at the same time glanced at the food on the table. She was really hungry. He reached out to get the bread. But at that moment, Brian moved. His speed was much faster than that of the female killer, and the piece of bread appeared in Brian's hand almost instantly. Before you eat, you have to answer a question for me. Where is Hannibal's treasure? Hearing this, the female killer raised her face and looked to the side, as if, what could you do to me? You don't have to answer. I have plenty of means to deal with you. Brian took a light bite of what was still delicious bread. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Before you tell me about Hannibal's treasure, I will let my subordinates take turns to have this ***x with you. Not many. They only have 100 people. You only need to serve 100 of them in these 3 days. In 3 days, my legion will arrive here, and after that, you have to serve everyone in the legion until you tell me where the treasure is. Brian didn't look at the female killer either, but began to eat the food on the table by himself. The female killer sat aside and began to tremble with anger. You are simply a devil. Wrong. I'm not a devil. The devil is just my subordinate. If you don't tell me where the treasure is, I will turn into a devil from hell, so that you can't live or die. At this moment, the female killer was almost on the verge of breaking out. One turned over and picked up the stool on the ground and charged at Brian. Boom. And Brian stretched out his right hand and caught the stool firmly. It's useless. Your assassination technique is useless in front of me. Although the Zoroastrian assassination technique of Parthia is weird and strong, Brian is not given for nothing. As the so-called martial arts in the world can only be fast, it combines the two major martial arts of ancient Rome and China, and his speed is astonishingly fast. With a strong hand, Brian removed the stool from the opponent's hand, and at the same time kicked it aside. Seeing how energetic you are, why don't we start now? Advertisement, 10 people in each round is fine. As Brian clapped his hands, 10 Roman soldiers in civilian clothes walked in from outside. You devil! The female killer staggered to her feet, almost biting a few words between her teeth. Thank you for your compliment. But next, you have to serve my soldiers well. After all, the fanatical female killer is a woman, so Benani subconsciously covered her chest. In the end, the female killer succumbed in humiliation. I can tell you about Hannibal's treasure, but you have to promise me one condition. But she wasn't done yet. Brian threw the stool in his hand out. If the female killer hadn't been able to hide quickly, she would have almost hit her. How many times have I said that you are not qualified to negotiate terms with me? Then Brian turned to look at the tin soldiers. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and serve Miss Bernani. Yes, Lord Brian. Those soldiers nodded in agreement, and then looked at the female killer with greedy eyes. I just want to live a more stable life in the future, and I don't want to be displaced. Looking at the 10 giant men who surrounded him, the female killer wailed from the side. Wait a minute, this condition is not too much. You can think about it. Brian snapped his fingers, stopping his soldiers. However, the premise is that you must tell me. Where is the treasure? Okay, I'll tell you. Under the coercion and temptation of the demon Brian, the female killer finally succumbed. At this moment, she took off her shirt, revealing her smooth and beautiful back. I saw a map tattooed on her beautiful back. Human skin base map. Interesting. Brian waved quickly and ordered his soldiers to take down the map. Chapter 24. Soon a piece of rubbings made of parchment appeared in Brian's hands. So it's here. Brian compared the map with the map of Iberia in his mind. Ebro River, Mount Reyes. It was discovered that Hannibal's treasure was hidden on Mount Reyes near the Ebro River just after leaving the Pyrenees. Brian had studied Hannibal's marching route before. To attack Rome from Iberia, you must cross the Pyrenees and the Alps. And his treasure location is located near the floodplain between two mountains. It seems that Hannibal, who grew up in Carthage, didn't have much experience in crossing the snow-capped mountains. When he crossed the Pyrenees, he lost a lot of troops. He hurriedly hid the property he had seized from Iberia here. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host for getting the treasure map. Reward 5 attribute points. Oh, it turns out that as long as you get the treasure map, you can complete this multiple choice question. At first, Brian thought he needed to get Hannibal's treasure, and he could get a reward. Brian waited another moment, because he also has a choice bonus about the female killer. It is to train a female killer to become a female slave. I haven't seen the system reply for a long time. It seems that it will take a while to get the reward. The 5 attribute points in his hand were quite a lot, so he quickly clicked on the attribute panel. Host, Brian. Age, 23. Position, Deputy Commander of the Roman 13th Legion. Strength, 102. Constitution, 101. Speed, 102 points, 1,400 free attribute points. 0. Brian, distribute these 5 attribute points evenly to the 3-dimensional attributes. Ding dong. It is detected that the host's 3-dimensional attributes exceed 100, and now the second layer exchange function is open. Advertisement and exchange function has been opened before, and now another exchange function has been opened. Brian quickly turned on the system to watch. Sure enough, the exchange function of the second floor is much more practical than that of the first floor. The first floor is full of design drawings of war weapons and the like, and they are expensive, and they cost 100,000 points at every turn. In the second layer, not only a wide variety, but also affordable. Brian casually clicked on the sword classification of the cold weapon chapter. 1. The sword in the stone, 1,000 points. 2. Broken steel sword, 800 points. 3. Roland sword, 800 points. 4. Autoclair, 800 points. 5. Daenslef, dragon sword, 1,500 points. After reading it, Brian didn't exchange it immediately. These are all famous swords that have been handed down from later generations, and they can be used in individual combat, but in the battle of a large army, the best partner of the large shield is always the Roman dagger. The exchange items unlocked on the first floor are some siege weapons that are beneficial to war. The exchange items unlocked on the second floor are items and weapons used by individual soldiers. Master Brian. At this moment, Polo's voice came, and Brian had to disconnect from the system. What's up? Brian watched as Polo rushed in a hurry. The female killer at the side began to eat a lot. The surrounding 10 soldiers surrounded him tightly. Master Brian, someone is looking for you outside, claiming to be the emissary of the City Lord. The envoy of the City Lord? Sure enough, it should come sooner or later. The City Lord sent Yulia to mediate before, but after being rejected by Brian, do you plan to do it yourself this time? Yes. The other party is the chief slave of the Castellan's family. The chief slave is still a slave, having a much higher status than all other slaves. Advertisement equivalent to the housekeeper of the master's house. This kind of slave is often very wise and has a strong working ability. Well, let's see what he has to say. Brian turned and looked back at the female killer again. Tie her up after she's finished eating. If she has the idea of escaping, shoot her to death. Although Brian has got the rubbings now, the female killer is absolutely not allowed to escape. Yes, Brian finally met the chief slave of the Castellan outside the manor. Hello, Honorable General Brian. I am Cass, the slave of Lord Santo. A 40-year-old middle-aged man was blocked outside the manor by Brian's soldiers. The huge bronze medal on his chest shows his status as a slave in the palm of his hand. This bronze medal records his personal information and that of its owner. As long as he carries this bronze medal, he can act freely in the city of Barcelona. The word Galgota on the bronze medal is extremely conspicuous, and it is the name of the City Lord of Barcelona. Are you the envoy of the City Lord? Yes, the villain is the envoy of the City Lord who brought the invitation letter of the City Lord here. First, Slave Cass handed a papyrus letter to Brian respectfully. Brian opened the letter and saw that it was the City Lord who invited him to participate in today's opera. The entertainment activities in ancient Rome were extremely monotonous, and the only entertainment methods were opera and gladiatorial performances. Okay, wise Cass, please reply to the City Lord. The general will be there today. This Barca City Lord is much more interesting than imagined. General Brian is always welcome. The chief slave Cass bowed and left after bowing. At the same time, Durku from the Duta family and Balasset from the Gatto family have already arrived at the City Lord's mansion. My lord, my son was crucified by that demon. You can't ignore it. He actually grabbed my son and extorted 5,000 gold coins. Is this something a Roman nobleman can do? Chapter 25. Facing the two chattering nobles, the City Lord Galgotha also had a headache. He couldn't help cursing inwardly. What are you damn scumbags in Rome doing in Barcelona? As soon as he came, he provoked the two nobles in the city, the Dutta family and the Kaido family. If it is an ordinary small family, it will be fine. And these two families are also extremely powerful in Barcelona. The Kaido family controls part of the security forces, while the other part of the security forces is in the hands of the City Lord. But it is clear that the security forces in their hands are too weak. When he faced Brian that day, he was completely wiped out. At the moment, there are still 50 to 60 people from the security forces lying on the bed and unable to get out of bed. Otherwise, the Kaido family must have sent troops to trouble. Don't worry, you two. When General Brian arrives at night, the old man will naturally ask him to release your son and apologize to Master Bashar. The two nobles, the City Lord Galgotha, said. In fact, the City Lord snorted coldly in his heart. I don't see you like this on weekdays, but now I have something to look for. He is only the lord of the city in name, but his actual power has been emptied by the nobles in the city. Of course, as the lord of a city, he will naturally have some weight. My lord, Brian entered the city of Barcelona without the consent of the Senate. I think we can report this matter to the Senate and hold him accountable, Bareth said from the side. Although Brian only brought one soldier in formation, it was still a Roman legionary. From the beginning of the founding of the Roman Republic, it was forbidden for legions to enter the big cities without orders. However, this law has since become less and less binding. Many generals ignored this law at all, and it happened from time to time that they directly drove the army into the city. If this matter was reported to the Senate, and the target was a prickly person like Brian, the Senate would at most issue a condemnation. Advertisement, that's right. My lord, Brian has blatantly kidnapped my son. Please report this matter to the Senate. Durku chimed in and said. Usually the two families have frictions in the city of Barcelona, but at this moment they surprisingly stand on the united front. You two, calm down first. Even if I am willing to report the matter here to the Senate, even if it takes half a month at the fastest speed, I will not be able to get a reply from the Senate. By then, let alone punish Brian. I am afraid that we have already returned to the Legion station. The Iberian Peninsula is now Spain, thousands of kilometers away from the city of Rome. In this ancient Rome with underdeveloped transportation, it is impossible to go back and forth without half a month. Then what should the city lord do? Durku asked hastily. His son is still locked in the basement of Brian Manor. The city lord smiled mysteriously. Brian is just a fool. I will get justice for you later. Before sending out the invitation letter, the city lord, Galgota, had done enough work. It can almost be said to have studied Brian's biography. In his eyes, Brian is simply a scum who relied on his family's power to reach a high position in the military, and found that Brian was extremely conceited and believed in personal power extremely. The city lord Galgotha thought to himself, this is your weakness as a rogue. Soon the evening came, and just as it was getting dark, Brian led 20 soldiers to come. In addition to inviting Brian, the city lord Galgotha invited almost all the nobles in the city of Barcelona. Brian's arrival was particularly eye-catching, although these nobles also had some private soldiers and guards. But how could these private guards compare with the battle-tested veterans? Brian led the 20 people. Each of them had a strong killing spirit, and Brian is wearing a muscular plate armor, and a weird long sword is hanging from his waist. You must know that whether the Roman legion is a general or a soldier, their standard equipment is a Roman dagger. Advertisement, and just now Brian used 1,000 points to exchange for the sword in the stone, the legendary Sword of Kings. Its length far exceeds the current knowledge of the Roman short sword. Wearing it on your waist gives you a different kind of beauty. Everyone, let me introduce to you. This is our great deputy commander of the 13th Legion, Lord Brian. Seeing Brian's arrival, the city lord immediately stood up to welcome him and introduced him to the other nobles. Brian first gave a standard Roman military salute to the nobles present. Although he looked down on these nobles, he still had to do it. Thank you, Lord City Lord, for your kind invitation. This is a gift I brought. With a wave of Brian's hand, 2 soldiers brought a wooden box to the Santo and opened it. There is actually a beautiful gold handicraft inside. This artifact is formerly Brian's Gallic spoils of war. Although the wooden box used is very large, the gold used in this handicraft is only a few tens of grams. It's so beautiful. It's God's grace. The lord of the city picked up this gold product, which was a delicate golden flower. Of course, he didn't know the story behind this golden flower. If he knew, he would definitely not touch it. This flower is called the flower of the golden curse, and anyone who touches this flower will end badly. That's why Brian put it in the wooden box. General Brian, where did you get this exquisite craft? Ahem, this is my spoil on the Gaul battlefield. Brian saw that the other party touched the flower of the golden curse, so he replied with a smile.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card, directly on my channel, or right here on the screen. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.